Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Councillor Stephen Holliday. I'm the chair of the Audit Committee. We have quorum. I'm now calling meeting 13 to order. Welcome, everyone. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall in Committee Room Number 1. The meeting is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. Although we may be meeting in different locations today, the Audit Committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. I also want to acknowledge meeting number 13 is our last scheduled meeting, correct, Mr. Clerk? And I wanted to take just a moment to thank everyone. It's been a fantastic 4 years in this term. I want to absolutely thank Madam Auditor General and her team for all of their work. And we've talked a lot about that work over the last number of years in this room, and I believe that is very important. I want to thank the committee clerks, Matthew Green and Fortis Chu, and the clerks team, of course, that help these meetings work and help get all of the things that we talk about into documentation. And that's a hard job, and we really appreciate it. I want to thank the Toronto Public Service for your commitment and your work that goes into these audits and all the reporting that you bring to this committee. You know the committee members enjoy going through this and asking you questions about it, but it's an important process. I want to thank the public for all of your input, those that came to the committee, and those, frankly, that call the Fraud and Waste Hotline, because many of these things couldn't happen without you, and it's important. And I want to really thank my colleagues, including Vice Chair Fletcher, who's not here right now, but I think she might be soon. You've brought passion to this, and I've had the joy of participating on this committee for 12 years, much of it as chair. And I know we have our political differences at times in council and other committees, but this is a place where I think we really work together well, and I think many of us share a vision of transparency and accountability, very careful use and respect for scarce public resources, excellence in service, and continuous improvement. And I think this is one of those committees where we all work together and build upon each other's ideas, and it's all the eyes around the table that contribute to better decision making. And I think that's really valuable. And maybe the last thing I would say to that is, I know these audits are hard, and sometimes they put a light on something that's not flattering. But I've always turned it around and said, the audits often give you a chance to be your license to make the change that you always wanted to do. And I hope you'll think about them that way, and I hope you'll consider the work that we've done over this term. It's been a privilege to serve as chair on this committee, and I really do think we've made our government better because of it. So with that, I'll carry on. If you're registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I don't believe we have any speakers, but if we do, I'll call the speakers in the order that they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Audit Committee meeting at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Members, the City Clerk has provided all the agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on the CMP, the Clerk's Meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need help with your devices. I also want to remind you to please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at Audit Committee at toronto.ca to help with motions. That's AUDITCTTE at toronto.ca. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please raise your hand or unmute your mic and indicate the item number and the nature of your interest. Seeing none, we will proceed. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our meeting on May 1st, 2026? Moved by Councillor Myers. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Members, we have 16 items on our agenda. Let's review that agenda, starting with item AU 13.1, the 2025 Audited Financial Statements, Consolidated City Sinking Funds and Trust Funds. We do have a presentation by the City's Controller, so that will be held. AU 13.2, City of Toronto Audit Findings Report for the year ended December 31st, 2025. we have a presentation by KPMG, so I will hold that item. AU 13.3, KPMG Management Letter Recommendations, update on action plans. May I have any members wishing to have questions, or may I have someone move to adopt the recommendation?
I will move to adopt, Mr. Chair.
So Councillor Crisanti adopts, pardon me?
Yes, to adopt the recommendation. To adopt the recommendation. Yes, correct.
So thank you, Mr. Clerk. Councillor Crisanti moves to adopt the recommendation. Our next item is AU 13.4. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. AU 13.4, financial statements and audit findings for the year ended December 31st, 2025. Yeah, so that this one is a motion to amend to move.
Yes, so we've got a motion here.
So Councillor Nunziata moves the recommendations.
Moves, so this is what has to be adopted. So there's no recommendation.
Okay, so it's a single
Yeah.
item. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. AU 13.5 is the status of the financial statement audits of the city's agencies and corporations. May I have a member move the recommendations? Councillor Myers moves. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. AU 13.6, which is the Auditor General's 2026 Consolidated Follow-up Report status of outstanding recommendations for city divisions, agencies, and corporations. May I ask a member to move that? Councillor Crisanti moves. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. AU 13.7, audit of solid waste management services, contract management for solid waste collections, organics processing services, and construction projects. We have a presentation from the Auditor General and from staff, so I'll hold that item. AU 13.8, audit of the city's administrative penalty system for parking and red light camera violations. We have a presentation from the Auditor General, so I'll hold that item. AU 13.9, Cybersecurity Audit of Toronto Public Library, Overall Assessment of Network Systems and Physical Security. May I have a member of the committee move adoption of the recommendation, please? Councillor Myers moves. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. AU 13.10, audit of the Toronto Police Services Information Technology Governance, driving improved accountability and transparency in achieving technology objectives. And may I have a member move adoption? Councillor Nunziata moves. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. AU 13.11, continuous controls monitoring, city staff overtime, absenteeism, and other payroll-related expenses. Any members wishing to hold? I'm going to ask to hold that. We'll get to that a bit later. AU 13.12, SmartTrack invoicing. Members, are there any members wishing to ask questions about this item? Okay. Seeing none, the clerk advises that we have to do something with it because there isn't a standing recommendation. Would anyone like to move receipt of the item? Councillor Nunziata moves receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. AU 13.13, Business Improvement Areas, update on the 2024 and 2025 audited financial statements. May I have a member move the item? Councillor Crisanti moves. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. AU 13.14, Community Centres, 2025 audited financial statements. May I have a member move the recommendations? Councillor Myers moves. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. AU 13.15, Arena's 2025 audited financial statements and status of outstanding 2025 audited financial statements. Councillor Crisanti, did you want to move the item or ask questions?
Move the item.
Councillor Crisanti moves the item. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries.
Sorry, point of order, my mistake. I wanted to hold the SmartTrack for questions.
Okay, I'll take a motion to reopen. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. We'll hold that in your name, Councillor Myers. AU 13.16 is the report on the results of applying specified auditing procedures to financial information other than financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2025. So the clerk is, unless someone has questions, the clerk has prepared a motion to send it to City Council for information. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Nunziata moves. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay. Thank you. Those are our items. We'll go back up to the top of the list to our first item, which is AU 13.1, the 2025 audited financial statements, consolidated city sinking funds and trust funds. We do have a presentation from the city's controller, Jason Lee.
Getting set up here.
Welcome. We'll let you get set up, and as soon as you're ready, please go right ahead.
Hey, good morning. Okay, sure. Good morning, Chair Holliday and Audit Committee members. I'm Jason Lee, the city's controller, and today I'm joined by Dewey Lee, Director of Accounting Services. We're going to take a few minutes to walk you through the city's 2025 year-end financial results. As required by the City of Toronto Act, we're seeking Audit Committee and Council approval for 3 sets of financial statements. The Consolidated City Statements, which includes activities of all city agencies and city divisions. The Sinking Fund Statements that reflect how sinking funds are used and invested, and the Trust Fund Statements that summarizes funds administered by the city. An example would be funds held for long-term care residents. Together, the statements provide a complete picture of the city's financial position and results for the year. I want to thank all city division and agency finance teams, many of which are here today, for their efforts and diligence to support timely completion of these statements. Before we jump into the financials, let's remind ourselves what the city achieved in 2025, summarized across the city's 4 strategic priorities. We kept Toronto moving through transit investments and faster delivery of construction projects. We improved housing affordability through unlocking rental units and enhanced housing benefits. We invested in people and neighborhoods by improving emergency response times and expanded services in libraries, pools, school food programs, and childcare spaces. And we continue to build climate change resilience, including opening the city's first net zero facility. These accomplishments show how the budget translates into real outcomes for residents, and they're the lens through which I encourage you to read the financial results. The city's financial highlights can be summarized into 3 key themes. First, population growth and evolving community needs created rising demand for both direct city services and services delivered on behalf of the federal and provincial governments. This was reflected in a $1.8 billion operating cost increase in 2025. Second, the city, like other municipalities, has limited revenue tools and continue to operate in a constrained environment. A modest operating surplus of $108 million was achieved through active cost control and disciplined prioritization. Finally, the city continued to invest significantly in infrastructure by adding over $6 billion of new tangible capital assets to support service delivery and to accommodate growth. I'm going to turn it over to Dewey now to take us through some of the details.
Thanks, Jason. This slide provides an overview of the city's income statement for the year end. In 2025, total revenues and total expenses were $19.7 billion and $18 billion respectively, which resulted in an overall accounting surplus of $1.7 billion. On the revenue side, the city's revenue sources continue to be dominated by taxation revenues and government transfers, followed closely by user fees, development charges, and earnings from government business enterprises, which included Toronto Parking Authority and Toronto Hydro. On the expenses side, salaries and benefits made up the largest component of costs, followed by contracted services, transfer payments made to external organizations, amortization, and materials. When these balances are considered together, this really reinforces the importance of maintaining a disciplined and strategic long-term financial plan. This also highlights the importance of sustained support from other orders of government similar to other Canadian municipalities, particularly as growth-related pressures continue and the city's own source revenues, such as property-related taxes and user fees, face increasing constraints. However, it's important to distinguish this accounting surplus of $1.7 billion from the city's overall accounting surplus. The accounting surplus includes several non-cash and capital-related adjustments, which we'll cover on the next slide. Just now, we noted that the city recognized an overall accounting surplus of $1.7 billion. This slide breaks down what that surplus represents this year and helps bridge the difference between the operating surplus noted on our variance report from the accounting surplus that we include on our financial statements. At the end of the year, the city had an operating surplus of $108 million, which really reflects the performance of the city's tax-supported operating activities. From an accounting standpoint, however, that surplus balance needs to be adjusted to account for not just the public sector accounting standard related requirements, but also the impacts of our capital budget. Non-cash adjustments include things like contributions to our reserves and reserve funds, repayment of long-term debt, and elimination of intercompany transactions that the city has with its various agencies. Certain adjustments include capital revenues, such as the provincial funding that the city received to support the maintenance of our DVP and Gardner highways, amortization, and the net acquisition of our tangible capital assets, or TCAs. It's important to note that the majority of the city's accounting surplus relates to the city's investments of TCAs rather than the amounts generated from the operating surplus. In summary, these accounting and capital-related adjustments bring us to that final $1.7 billion accounting surplus that you note on the financial statements. This is really important to recognize as we move on from the income statement to the balance sheet, as our annual surplus, is part of our overall accumulated surplus total. The balance sheet provides a snapshot of the city's financial position at year end. In 2025, the city reported total assets of $67 billion and total liabilities of $29.3 billion. TCAs make up the largest portion of our asset base. These assets reflect the long-term investments that we've been making in our infrastructure, such as roads, public transit, and various facilities. Other significant assets include cash and receivables, investments in our GBEs. On the liability side, the city's obligations consist primarily of long-term debt, employee future benefit liabilities, deferred revenues, and accounts payable. Overall, the difference between the city's assets and liabilities results in an accumulated surplus of $37.7 billion. This provides a strong net asset position, but it's important to remember that most of this value is tied up in our tangible capital assets that are used to deliver services and therefore cannot be easily converted into cash. The restrictive nature of this balance is what makes planning for the city's buildup and use of reserves such an important part of our long-term financial plan. Based on the city's balance sheet, the reserves and discretionary reserve funds, which are part of our accumulated surplus balance, represent important fiscal tools. These balances provide flexibility to manage our ongoing financial risks, including stabilizing our tax rate changes, supporting various capital investments, and responding to emergencies or unexpected events. At the end of 2025, the city held approximately $5.5 billion in its reserves and discretionary reserve funds. While this is a significant balance, these funds are largely committed. As noted on the slide, approximately 94% of our reserves were committed for various operating and capital priorities, which really shows that we're using our balances intentionally. However, this also indicates that there's limited flexibility to redirect these balances to new or emerging pressures without affecting our existing plans and commitments. This is particularly important when we consider these balances alongside our operating surplus of $108 million. While the operating result was favorable, this is a relatively moderate surplus, and it demonstrates that similar to other cities, our city has limited capacity to significantly replenish reserves through annual operating results alone. And that's why it's so important that we maintain these balances at appropriate levels, especially as we continue to invest in our infrastructure. This next slide illustrates the city's investments in TCAs over the past 10 years. During this period of time, the city's TCAs increased from $27 billion in 2015 to $48.7 billion in 2025, which represents an increase of $21.7 billion, or 81%. This growth reflects sustained investment in infrastructure needed to support our growing city, as well as maintain our service levels. A growing asset base, however, has long-term financial implications that we need to consider. As a city invests in its infrastructure, it's also critical to think about those future ongoing costs associated with maintenance and eventual replacement of those assets. In particular, these asset lifecycle requirements place pressure on not just our capital budget, but also our operating budget, which will need to be carefully considered like other cities as the city makes its prioritization-related decisions. And with that, I'll turn it back to Jason.
Thanks, Dewey. As we close, I want to celebrate the city's receipt of the Canadian Award for Financial Reporting. This award from the Government Finance Officers Association recognizes the city's high standard for reporting quality, transparency, and accountability. In addition, the city successfully implemented a new accounting system, SAP S/4HANA, in November 2025. We're all very excited in this once-in-25-year upgrade, and the new system is going to modernize many of our financial processes and strengthen the internal controls. A big thank you to Mike Morera and the Financial System Transformation Project team for their steady leadership and team approach to problem solving. Finally, I want to thank Dewey Lee, Mark Rozic, and the Accounting Services team for their extraordinary dedication and professionalism during a challenging year and season. Not only did I have to deal with the peak effort associated with a normal year-end, but the system implementation also required additional attention to testing, data migration, and training. I'm especially proud that the team completed all year-end activities without extra time or budget. With that, I want to thank the committee for your time today, and we'll be glad to take any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. I'll ask if there's questions of staff. Councillor Myers.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I know I always ask this question, but I'm going to ask it again. So we started off the 2025 budget with a $1.2 billion opening pressure. And I think I recall from the number, it was a $108 million operating surplus and $1.679 billion surplus, roughly. Does that sound right? Can you just explain how that happened?
Thanks to the speaker. So I think we are talking at times about different components. I think the team did a fantastic job, and I'm happy to revert back to one of the slides that really speaks the differences between an accumulated surplus and an operating variance that you would see through a budget variance. We then bring in the added element of an opening budget pressure. What an opening budget pressure represents is essentially the cost to be able to continue to provide that same level of service to meet the commitments that council has made in the following year, consistent with what is being provided in the current year. So that would account for inflation, population growth, commitments, contractual agreements. That pressure is what has to be balanced. So you've got to bring forward a budget in the following year that is balanced. When we talk about the financial statements, it's really where are we at a point in time? it has and accounts for certain liabilities. The difference between what you see in the financial statements and what is presented in the opening budget pressure are decision points. There are decisions that can be made as part of an opening budget pressure. It is not a liability as it's seen in our financial statements. So you will have to make a decision as it relates to services that are being provided, as it relates to certain cost pressures, as it relates to capital investments, as it relates to the pace and scale at which you address your SOGR needs. So they're similar but different at the same time. And what's important is that all of our teams in finance and council understands the implications of each of these on our financial statements, but also on our long-term financial sustainability. So I hope that helps. Yeah.
Yes, a little. I'll ask the same question next year. What were the decision points, I guess, for 2025 that were responsible for, I guess, for the decisions? What were the decision points that got us to where we got to at the end of the financial statements, into the fiscal? Were there key decision points?
We can pull up the slides again.
And to the chair, maybe I'll jump in. I think there's a difference. So the decision points were related to the opening budget pressure. So those were decisions that were made as we brought forward a balanced budget for 2025 or
What
for
decisions?
2026.
What were the specific decisions?
So decisions would be anything in terms of what may we be doing on a property tax increase? What might we be doing in terms of reviewing levels of service that we would provide? What might we be doing as it relates to hiring or hiring strategies? What decisions might come forward as it relates to reserve draws? So there's a series of decisions that would come forward as part of the budget. It would also be, what are you doing in terms of driving efficiencies or reductions? May you defer consideration of certain investments? So those are the types of decisions that would come forward through the budget debate. What we see in the financial statements are then the outcomes of those investments, and what does it mean in terms of our accumulated surplus, our investments in tangible capital assets.
Yeah, if I can add through the chair, I think our budget discussion focuses, there's a lot of focus on the operating impacts, how much cash we get from our tax levies and user fees and how we're going to spend the funds. What we add in the financial statement discussion is the impact of the capital plan. So, like we discussed in the presentation, the accounting rules forces us to recognize assets or investments in our capital over time through amortization. So if we were to buy a subway car, we do not take the entire expenditure in the current year. And that difference through amortizing over a number of years, 20, 30 years, it creates a difference between our operating surplus and our financial statement annual surplus. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions?
Yes, Chair.
Councilor Crisanti.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a couple of questions. We'll start with the sinking funds. I'd like to understand that a little better. This is monies that's used for, from what I understand, known expenses that are coming up. Is that how you define sinking funds? It's an interesting term. It's money put aside for future commitments. Can you explain what that is?
To the chair, so the city is obligated when we issue debt for capital investments, we're obligated to ensure we're paying not just the interest associated with that debt, but as well as the principal. So the sinking funds is where we make annual contributions consistent with that debt repayment, which will then be payable at the end of the term of the debt in terms of the final payment. So we will leverage that. It's then managed through our investment board in terms of yielding any return, again, to support the eventual repayment of the loans.
What does that number look like in this particular fund? How much is in the fund right now?
To the chair, our accounting team is just pulling the exact figures.
And how do you predict or calculate what you need to put in this fund?
I can begin. Sorry, if you have the exact figures.
Yeah. Through the chair, we have $3.2 billion in assets in our sinking funds compared to liabilities of 3.2. So what happens every year is the actuaries calculate the sinking fund requirements that needs to be topped up to, for future repayment of our debt And from that, we adjust through investment income to come up with the amount that the city has to contribute to the sinking funds. So what we want to aim at is our sinking fund assets to be equal to our sinking fund liabilities, so we can be assured that when the time comes, we have the funds available to repay our debts.
Okay, thank you. So what's good news in this presentation is that there's a couple of surpluses that you mentioned as you presented all the various different budgets. Operating surplus of 108 million, 1.7 billion for accounting surplus. Let's start with 108 million, surplus of 108 million. I'm just curious about that because going into a 25-26 budget season, which we already did, at that time, remember having a number of discussions, money was really tight. There was interest in investing, at least on my part, to invest more in various different programs for seniors and other things, and other services, core services are critically needed. But it looks like we have 108 million, or the 108 million could have been used to have a zero tax increase. It works out to just over 2%. Did we not predict a surplus going into the budget process?
To the chair, we did. So we come forward with variance reports throughout the year. The surplus of 108 million is, I think, within a couple of $1 million of our projection when we brought forward the projection to year-end. We then leveraged that variance report and that projection as part of the 2026 budget process. So we had already anticipated that we would achieve a surplus of roughly 108 million. We had projected that we would then contribute that to our budget bridging reserve and leverage it as part of the balancing actions for our 2026 budget. So it has already been factored and fully accounted for.
So just theoretically, we could have come in with a zero budget increase, tax increase, and still had a few $1 million left for the surplus. Would that be a correct assessment?
That was already assumed and factored in our planning. So we had already accounted for those funds. I won't take up all of your time and talk about the challenges of using one-time funds for ongoing expenses. I'll leave that alone, but we had already accounted for that and leveraged it as part of our planning process.
Okay, 1.7 billion accounting surplus. Define that. The fact that there's the word accounting in there tells me that it's just on paper.
I'll start and I'll throw it to our accounting team. It isn't. So I think what that demonstrates, the city has significant commitments towards investing in capital infrastructure. You would have heard during the budget process, I would have noted the fact that I think in the last 10 years, we've roughly doubled the size of our investment in capital. What comes with that is an increase in our tangible capital assets. So the value of our roads, our buildings, our bridges, our structures. The level at which we're investing in capital is at a much faster rate than our assets are depreciating. So what you're seeing is an increase in our accumulated surplus or our accounting surplus, which reflects the growth in the base of our assets. Now, as our team noted, that is a good thing, and it's good for us to be doing that. It does not mean it's money in hand that I can then turn around and leverage the value of those assets to be able to support operating expenses.
And Mr. Chair, one more quick question, if I may, or I can come. Last one. Go ahead. Okay, the last one is the 5.5 billion in reserves that you indicated, and however, there are commitments towards those reserves. Do you know the value of those commitments right now? Is there a balance after those commitments, or is the 5.5 entirely used up to the penny?
It's used up and then some. So the way that we'll look at our reserves, we run continuity schedules against each of our reserves. So we'll look at the current balance in the reserve. We will look at what the expected draws are against that reserve over a 10-year period. We will also look at what are the annual contributions that we have to make to those reserves to support those commitments. I'm going to combine both reserves and some of our deferred revenue accounts, but in total, I think we have around 12 billion when you combine the two, and we have around 40 billion of commitments. The best example I can give is in Toronto Water's capital reserve. There's $1 million or $2 billion in the reserve, but you have an $18 billion capital plan, which is predicated on us generating rate revenue and making annual contributions to the reserve to support those council commitments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further questions? I'm going to ask a couple myself. What's our credit rating?
AA plus.
AA plus. And so that's a talking point at council, but what does it really mean, especially for raising debt?
To yourself, on an annual basis, we will work with 3 different credit rating agencies. In working with those agencies, there's a series of analysis that will be undertaken that is really looking at the sustainability of our finances.
Right.
The importance of a credit, a high credit rating is at the same time that we're doing that, we're actually trying to build interest in municipal bonds on the capital market.
It saves us money.
It saves us money.
Okay, thank you. How does the credit rating agencies use these financial statements, or do they? They're they're steering investors, right, or guiding investors.
Yeah,
So these, yeah.
Central,
Yeah,
right?
through the chair, our financial statements are ultimately used to calculate ratios and assess the overall health of our financial
So
position.
that's the debt to equity ratio, correct?
Things like that, yes.
Right. So could you just explain really quick what the debt to equity ratio is and how we monitor it?
I don't think we have the exact ratio calculated at the
Okay.
moment. Each of our credit rating agencies calculates that figure slightly differently from report to report, just because they have different variables that they like to consider. But on an overall basis, when they take a look at our financial statements, they like to think about, what's our overall, long-term debt balance looking like, and in comparison to our revenue, like our own source revenues, like property taxes and things, does it look like we're able to afford it at the end of the day?
And our assets.
Yes, and we have a very strong debt servicing ratio, which shows that we are able to afford our debt quite well. So they always take those types of things into consideration. So how does do we generate enough revenues at the end of the day to pay for our expenses and
Keep
our
a good
debt?
credit rating, we put a cap on that ratio, do we not? So that it's healthy, we don't over borrow.
So I think
It's
there's
what we own.
Yeah, it helps with our credit rating. It also ensures that we retain enough operating revenue to support our operations as well, and we're not leveraging too much of our revenue to support debt repayment.
So what happens when we carve a big chunk out of the capital plan and we suddenly get some elbow room?
So to the extent, if you were to leverage more, so we have a 15% debt service ratio, which essentially means no more than 15% of the property tax revenue we generate will support debt servicing. If you go above 15%, it does mean you can invest more in capital, but it also means at the same time you're likely going to have additional operating impacts of that capital investment. You will also have less operating revenue coming from property tax base to sustain your operations.
So if we upload, say the gardener, that helps our credit rating because we have a healthier ratio. What happens when we fill in all of that capital room with other projects? What's our plan to deal with that? Does costs go up?
So in the case of uploading the gardener, what we did is we redirected those funds though to address SOGR needs. So it wasn't necessarily reinvesting in additional assets. It was to be able to address a state of good repair challenges. That was actually a focal point in discussions with the credit rating agencies and was perceived as a benefit in terms of actions we were taking.
Last question. We typically don't spend all of our capital plan every year. It's hard, right? It's hard to spend all of the aspirational projects that we have, but sometimes we do really, really well. If we carry on that pattern and we end up spending the entire capital budget or pretty close to it, what is the long-term implication that we need to think about that'll be reflected in the financial statements? Will we effectively run out of money?
So it's quite an important point. We've actually, you will see as we're just completing our capital variance report, we've done quite well in 2025 in terms of our overall capital spend. It is the highest capital spend we've had, at least since amalgamation here in the city. But you're absolutely right. The higher capital spend, the more cash that is going out the door to be able to support those capital expenditures. It does put a pressure on our cash flow, and it is something we have to manage both from a cash flow perspective, but also in a perspective of total debt issued compared to debt ratios, the amount of debt the market is willing to bear for the City of Toronto. So it's something we're constantly looking at, and there's a push and pull to it. At times you may be a victim of your own success, where then we have to actually scale back the size of our capital program to account for that higher spend rate.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, members wishing to speak? Seeing none, may I have a member that would like to move the recommendations? Councilor Myers. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to our next item. That is AU 13.2, City of Toronto Audit Findings Report for the year ended December 31st, 2025. We do have some guests that are coming to the front, so we'll just allow a moment for them to get in place and get connected.
Good morning, and thank you for having us here today.
Good morning and welcome.
I'm Maria Krishnud. I'm an audit partner in KPMG's private enterprise practice, and with me today is Navreet Lit. She's our audit manager out of the same practice. We're here today to present to you our audit findings for the audit of consolidated financial statements of the City of Toronto for the year ended December 31st, 2025. We're here in our role as the independent third party and external auditors engaged by the city through council approval for providing independent opinion on the accuracy of the financial statements to meet the requirements of the Toronto Municipal Code as well as the public sector accounting standards. Our report today also is per the requirement of the Canadian auditing standards to report the findings of our audit to this committee in your role as those charged with governance. I'll take you through this report. I'll take the report as read. I'll take you through the highlights, which is on slide 4. And I won't go through the rest of the report, just take it as read. In terms of the status of the audit, at this stage, we've substantially completed our audit of the consolidated City of Toronto, which includes the city proper, as well as the significant agencies, including Toronto Hydro, Toronto Transit Commission, and Toronto Community Housing. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank City's finance team for their support during the audit, which enabled us to complete our audit in a timely manner. There were no significant changes to our audit plan from the audit planning report that was reported to this committee early on this year. All of our audit procedures that were required were completed based on the materiality that was established and communicated to this group. As a result of our audit, we did not identify any unusual or fraudulent transactions that should be reported to you. We also did not identify any significant control deficiencies that should be reported to you. There were a few audit misstatements identified as a result of our audit, which are noted later on in the presentation. However, these adjustments are not material individually or in aggregate to the consolidated financial statements, and we will be issuing a clean audit opinion on the consolidated financial statements. I also want to comment on the results of the audit procedures that we completed on the system conversion that took place this year. It was a huge undertaking for the city. It was a massive system transformation, but overall it went well. Based on our audit procedures, the financial information that has been transferred over to the new system is complete and accurate, and there are no significant issues to report. There are some improvement points that we have already shared with management from an IT perspective, but nothing significant that should be reported to this committee today. There were no new accounting or auditing standards that came into effect this year, so all the accounting policies that were applied are consistent from prior year. Last item I want to comment is on our independence. I can confirm that KPMG as a firm continues to stay independent of the city in all capacities. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions at this point.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there questions of the presenter? Seeing none, thank you. I'll ask the committee members, is there anyone wishing to speak on this or move the item? I'll be happy to move the item. I'll be happy to move the item. Yeah. Mr. Clerk, if you could put it on the screen. So we're recommending that City Council receive the audit findings report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Once again, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next item is AU 13.7. That is Audit of Solid Waste Management Services, Contract Management for Solid Waste Collections, Organics Processing Services, and Construction Projects. We do have two presentations. So if we just take a moment to allow everyone to get in place, and I'll invite the Auditor General to commence as soon as her team is ready.
Thank you, Chair. This presentation summarizes the results of our contract management audit of solid waste management services. I'd like to acknowledge my team who are with me today for their excellent work on this audit. Ariane Chan, Claire Pastori, Nurali Pandya, and Nizam Chowdhury. We sincerely appreciate the cooperation and assistance we received from the Solid Waste Management Services Division, in particular Matt Kelleher, Annette Sinovid, Matthew Cascara, Rennie Singh, and Tamara Sterenchuk. Thank you as well to Genevieve Sharkey from PMMD and Scott Pasternak from Legal Services. Our presentation will cover a brief background, why this audit matters, outline our audit objectives, key audit findings and recommendations, followed by my closing remarks. Solid Waste Management Services divides its collection services into 4 districts as shown on the map on the slide. The city uses in-house staff for districts 3 and 4, as well as for city, street, and park litter bin collections. Contracted service providers are used for districts 1 and 2, as well as all of the city's front-end bin collections. For this audit, we specifically looked at contracted collections for districts 1 and 2, as well as front-end bin collections across the city. The division is responsible not only for collections, but also for transporting, disposing, and processing of waste for the city, as well as maintaining physical assets and managing construction projects. With regards to processing, the city owns 2 organics processing facilities, with the end goal of turning collected organics materials into compost and renewable natural gas. These facilities are operated and maintained by contracted service providers. Out of all of these services, our audit primarily focused on contract management of organics processing facilities and construction projects, in addition to the contracted collection services we previously mentioned. This audit matters because the management of solid waste is a critical public service that affects Torontonians. If solid waste accumulates in public areas and in local bodies of water, it can degrade our environment and negatively impact human health. The division has a diverse portfolio of over 300 active contracts valued at $1.8 billion. Given the financial significance, the focus of this audit was specifically on contract management. Once again, for clarity, this audit did not review the division's in-house operations related to collections and litter operations services. The objective of this audit was to assess whether the division has contract management systems, policies, and processes in place to monitor the performance of contracted vendors and hold them accountable for meeting expected outcomes and terms and conditions as stated in the contracts, and that contract payments are properly supported and in accordance with the city's policies and procedures. Our audit included a review of 17 contracts valued at $793 million of varying types, including service providers for collections and organics processing, external consultants, and construction contractors. Our audit identified opportunities for improvement in 2 main areas. We'll briefly highlight the key findings and recommendations in the slides that follow. The first area for improvement is for the division to ensure contractual performance requirements are met through enhanced monitoring activities and accountability mechanisms. For collection service providers, while management reported that contracted collection services were reliable 99.9% of the time in 2025, we found opportunities to improve monitoring as we found that missed collection service requests increased by 33% from 2020 to 2025. Further, from January to June 2025, we noted 7,045 instances of missed collections, including 41 instances of whole streets missed. For disputed service requests, the service provider did not address the initial missed collection service request for 43% of the 724 disputed service requests reviewed. We also found that the service providers did not meet the standard service time for collections and bin-related service requests 17% and 26% of the time, respectively. For the organics processing facility operators, we found the operators did not consistently meet some performance standards and requirements related to equipment maintenance and spare parts inventory management, as well as regulations and health and safety requirements. We reviewed 84 monthly compliance checklists across the 2 contracts and noted 376 instances, or about 10%, of non-compliance with operating and maintenance standards. This includes, but is not limited to, the facilities processing rate and biogas and digester solids quality standards. If these standards are not met, there is a risk that digester solids may not be used to create compost. Further, improper maintenance of facility assets and equipment could result in major asset failures, unplanned facility shutdowns, and potentially require the use of third-party external processing services to meet the city's needs. I'll now pass it over to Ariane Chan, Assistant Auditor General.
Thank you, Madam Auditor General. For the sampled external consultant contracts, we found that 45% of the payment samples did not have the required inspection report supporting the charges. As a result, we were unable to verify $88,000 of inspection services, which is 80% of the total billed inspection services. We also noted that external consultants did not always include key details in the inspection reports, such as the number of hours the construction crews spent on site and any equipment used. This information is important as it helps the division verify the invoice amounts and ensures contractors are not overpaid. In addition, consultants did not consistently document or respond to requests for information, or RFIs, within required timeframes. We found that 35% of the sampled RFIs reviewed had a response time exceeding the 5 business day contractual requirement. We also found that the 34% of RFIs reviewed were missing written external consultants' responses. Untimely responses to RFIs increases the risk of project delays and disputes. Accountability mechanisms included in contracts are integral to the city's ability to monitor vendor performance, protect the city from financial loss, and ensure value for money. We found additional contractual accountability mechanisms, such as key performance indicators and performance targets, could enhance monitoring and incentivize contract performance, as we found staff were unable to or did not apply some of the available mechanisms. For example, we found that some liquidated damages clauses in collection service provider contracts may not always allow division staff to apply them effectively. Lastly, while some of the contracts included specific performance standards, no performance targets were established. Incorporating key performance indicators and performance targets into future contracts where applicable can help encourage desired performance and assess vendor performance. We found that supplier performance evaluations were not consistently completed by the division to meet the minimum required number for 83% of the construction contractor samples. Further, the division did not conduct formal performance evaluations for collections and organics processing facility service provider contracts because the city's performance evaluation procedure does not clearly specify its applicability to these service contracts. These are missed opportunities for the city to provide timely feedback, encourage performance improvement, and inform future procurement decisions. The second area for improvement is for the division to strengthen payment and change order review processes. The audit identified improvement opportunities in the division's payment and change order processes to strengthen cost controls, prevent overpayments, and decrease the risk of unauthorized work. In our audit sample, we found overpayments to service providers totaling $27,600. Payments to construction contractors and external consultants were also sometimes made without the required supporting documents. There were also instances where construction work was paid in advance of performance, which goes against contract terms. These gaps increase the risk that payments were not made in accordance with the contract terms. Change orders were also not always adequately reviewed for pricing accuracy, resulting in pricing errors totaling $14,000 in our audit sample. For both construction contractors and external consultants, additional work was performed without the required change directive or written authorization for 77% of applicable change order samples. Compliance with the change directive process ensures that approval and justification for the additional work is properly documented should future disputes arise between the city and the construction contractor or external consultant. Lastly, we noted that the division lacks a policy and a centralized process to track and analyze change orders, limiting its ability to identify trends, assess root causes, and address systemic issues affecting contract costs, scope, and schedule. I will now pass it back to the Auditor General for her closing remarks.
Thank you, Ariane. The main messages or takeaways from this audit report can be found in our 8 recommendations. Implementing the 8 recommendations in this report will strengthen contract management and oversight, hold vendors accountable, reduce the risk of overpayments and contract non-compliance, and support better management of project changes by enhancing monitoring of contractor performance to ensure contract compliance, incentivizing improved contract performance through additional accountability mechanisms, consistent use of performance evaluations to provide timely feedback to service providers and construction contractors, and improving the payment and change order review processes. Management has agreed to all the recommendations, and their response and action plans are included as Appendix 1 in the report. Thank you. That's the end of our presentation, and I believe that management now has a short presentation, and then we're available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just take a moment to change over at the front of the room. Welcome, Mr. Kelleher from the Solid Waste team, and invite you to begin as soon as you're ready.
Good morning, committee. Matt Kelleher, General Manager of Solid Waste Management Services. The purpose of today's presentation is to provide at a high level the divisional performance, outline our contract monitoring that we have in place right now, and share management's key takeaways from the auditor's report, and then also describe a few of our next steps in this journey. Just very high level, solid waste collects approximately 700,000 tons of material from 840,000 homes and 23,000 litter bins. We manage organics facilities, transfer station, collection yards, and have over 1,200 staff in the division. Our operating budget is north of $400 million, and our 10-year capital is around $1.4 billion. The total contract portfolio that we have is around 300 contracts worth $1.8 billion. So on a high level, when we look at the divisional performance, and this is a report that was provided to Service Excellence Committee on Monday, and I thought it was relevant to also include here, just in terms of our main services that we provide in the division. I won't go through each one, but when we look at what was in scope for the audit, the residential curbside collections, our reliability rate across the city is 99.95%. And yes, there are unfortunately missed collections from time to time, and our ability to collect that material the next day is we meet the service level standard 95% of the time. What this chart's showing here is all of our service levels across the major areas of work, and if you go down to the very bottom, all divisional services. So this covers if we get a service request in for a broken bin, a missed collection, a needle that needs to be picked up, etc., we meet our council service level standards over 91% of the time. When we look more specifically at the contracts that were audited by the Auditor General, we broke out District 1, District 2 in our front-end contracts. As you can see here, we have a reliability rate over the past 4 years, north of 99.9% across the contracts, and this is in line with what was determined by the Auditor General in their sample size of January to June of 2025 of 7,000 missed collections. We are still in that above 99.9% of the time your material, if it's put out, will be collected. The one piece that we need to highlight on this slide, or would like to highlight, is we do know that there are miscollections. There's various reasons for that, whether it's weather, new drivers, new routes, and we take responsibility for that, and we're always learning and doing better. But when we look at the number of touch points that we have in a given year, when we look just at districts 1, 2 in our front end, we have over 33, 34 million touch points where we service the residents just in those 3 contracts. So yes, there are miscollections. Yes, we can always do better. When we look at the investments that we put in the division for contract oversight and management, we have a dedicated group of staff in our contract integration and management and compliance unit. So they look after everything from our contract lifecycle management framework to divisional risk assessments. And again, on our collection side, we have GPS, telematics, and a number of other programs that we deploy within the division. On our curbside collection program, again, we have another dedicated group that looks specifically at our collection contracts, and that's our collection contracts and program support unit. So this team has dedicated on-road staff that look at everything from is the vehicle safe to drive, service requests that have been put in, and making sure that the contractors do not mix the materials when they're collecting materials. So again, very high contract management support here on those contracts. On our capital side, we follow the Engineering and Construction Services Capital Works Manual. We also have a divisional lifecycle management framework that helps guide all of our contracts and our consulting arrangements. When we look more specifically at our organics management facility, not only do we have staff monitoring and managing the contracts, we also have an external engineering consultant that helps us hold the vendor to account. And we have a number of meetings between us, our contractor, and our consultant to always continuously improve at our organics treatment facilities. The key takeaways from me and my team from this audit is that we have contract management practices in place. And again, there's always room for continuous improvement. Service delivery and reliability, as shown with our numbers, is high. But again, we can always continually improve to try to get to less miscollections and strive to have that 100%. And many of the findings that have been brought within the report from our perspective are on documentation, follow-up, and different contract terms that may be needing to be amended in future contracts, which we will take under consideration. And again, we agree with all the Auditor General's recommendations in the report. So just in terms of next steps, we will continue to do our best to hold the contractors responsible for meeting all of their contract terms. Again, our service levels are high, but we can keep moving those in the right direction. We will look at cost-benefit analysis on increasing our GPS for contract monitoring, work with legal services on different contract terms that we can put into our contracts, and again, continue to work with other divisional partners who have capital projects to strengthen our work order processes that were previously identified in other audits. And with that, I'd just like to thank my team for all of their hard work on this file and thank the Auditor General for their insights because they will help us continue to do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of staff. Councillor Nunziata.
Yeah, I have a few questions. So in the report, and thank you for the report and thank you for your presentation, that 7,045 missed collections, 41 whole streets missed from January to June. So can you explain to me how, with the missed collections, is it, do residents complain about it? Like for 41 whole streets to be missed, I mean, what's the reason for that other than having a new driver?
So thank you for the question, Councillor. So when we look at the 41 streets, it's one of those numbers that We use internally miscollection of streets that when it's used in outward-facing documents, it could be seen as, quite a shocker. The miscollection of streets, we have an internal KPI. If there's 3 homes that have been missed, we classify that as a missed street. So 3 homes. And what that allows us to do is put out our teams and do much more detailed investigation of why those homes were missed. So again, classification is good for us because we can, get our teams out there a lot quicker. We take it, although we take every miscollection seriously, when we know that there's 3 or more, we're able to get out there a little bit quicker. When it's framed as a whole street, which is what we do internally, it's good for us, but sometimes when those definitions are used externally, it could, frame it a little bit more harder or harsher than what the reality for us has been.
So you're aware of the missed streets or homes by a complaint to 311 or a complaint from the count? Like how do you
So these would all be
monitor that?
based on service requests that are put in through 311, or if something comes into the counselor's office, we would document those as miscollection.
So when we have those miscollections, is the contractor penalized for it at all?
So under the contract terms, there are liquidated damages for miscollection. One of the challenges that we have is implementing certain pieces within our liquidated damages clauses because the city is not out money, and therefore it's a little bit challenging to collect for those miscollections. So we do administer our liquidated damages where we have a loss or if they mix materials, but generally if there's a miscollection, it's not applied.
Okay, so I want to go to the now the overpayment and invoices and the change of explain to me, I don't know if it'll be you or explain to me how can we pay an invoice? Do we not pay what's on the invoice? It's like I don't understand that. So how does who pays the invoices? Is it someone that's not reviewing the amounts on it? I don't understand.
So through the chair, we found that there could be an improvement made in terms of reviewing the invoice before
So
payment.
nobody reviews the invoices?
Just looking at my team, if there's anything further to add there. I believe that was the case for what we found.
Through the chair, people are reviewing the invoices, but we found in some samples that there are some discrepancies between the underlying support and the invoice that were not caught, resulting in some overpayments.
So, okay, 14,000 of change order errors. Now, how does that happen? Well, who pays these invoices? Does anybody review any of this in contracts, or is it just, I don't know. Does everybody do their own little thing? I don't know.
So I'll start off, and then perhaps if there's anything for management to add. So
It just doesn't make sense to me.
There is a review process, but we found that there were some mathematical pricing errors in terms of our sample that we reviewed, and so there could be more diligence in terms of the review process.
Okay. Matt, did you want to say something? You don't pay the invoices personally, right?
No, I don't personally
Okay.
know, Councillor, no. But Councillor,
Maybe you should.
Councillor, if it helps, just provide a little bit more detail. For example, one of the invoices that was flagged by the Auditor General's office was one where there was a change order for approximately $100,000, and the payment for that, once it hits a certain threshold of $100,000, it's 5%, anything above $100,000, and 10% below, and there was just a mistake by someone where they coded it as the 10% additional fee. So there's those little pieces that we can definitely improve on, but in terms of when we look at the size and amount of the financial discrepancies compared to the size of the contract value that we have, it's very small. But again, we do want to make sure that they're paid correctly, and we'll continue to take the advice of the Auditor General and put a little bit more diligence on that.
Thank you for your presentation.
Additional questions?
Mr. Chair, I do.
Okay, I got, Councillor Myers got his hand up, a split, you want?
Yeah.
Okay,
You could
over
go
to you to
first.
Councillor Crisanti. Thank you, Councillor Myers.
Sorry, am I going first?
Yes, go
Mr.
ahead,
Chair?
Councillor Crisanti. Councillor Myers said go ahead.
Okay. All right, perfect. Well, thank you, Councillor. Well, just a couple, actually I have more than a couple, but let's start with this one first. On the change order process, what would actually trigger a change order for solid waste? I'm just trying to understand, the routes are already determined, the contracts are already out there. They know, our contractors know what streets they're, whether they're District 1, 2, 3, or 4. They know where the work is taking place. What happens during this process that would then trigger a change order? Does somebody realize that there's a scope of work during the process of picking up garbage that wasn't included in the contract, so they need a change order? I just don't understand that part.
So, Councillor, the majority of the change orders, if not all of them, would be on our capital side, our capital program, where we're delivering works across multiple transfer stations, our organics processing facilities, and the scopes of work may need to be altered or changed based on site conditions and just the additional investigation that might have happened after the contract was signed. So that's where the vast majority of our change orders would come from.
Okay, that makes more sense. So second question, just comparing service levels between 1 and 2, 3 and 4, those two districts bundled up in 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4 in terms of missed pickups and any other area. Do you have a comparison on how the service levels compare? Do we have more or less issues in terms of missed garbage pickups in compared to the first two districts to the second two districts?
So, Councillor, the service delivery on our Districts 1 and Districts 2, which are contracted out, versus our Districts 3 and Districts 4, which are in-house, are generally identical from our reliability rate, from our overall miscollection rate. And there was a report to committee and council a number of months ago that did provide an update comparison of those 4 districts, and we can get you a copy of that and walk you through it without any issues.
Well, that'd be great. Thank you so much. And so next question, the inspection reports. So 45% of payments missing, their inspection reports are missing for 45% of payments. Does that mean those payments, so what happened to that money? You know, somehow the payments, were they still made? Like, what's the status of the 45% missed payments or missed reports that would, I guess, lead to the payment, right?
Perhaps I'll start off. So we would expect, through the chair, we would expect that the inspection reports would be included to be able to have the support in order to make the payment, but found that for that percentage, right, they were not. So management, if you wanted to clarify further.
Yeah, and the payment was made even though the inspection report was there. So what happened there?
So, Councillor, you know, the process would be that you would have the full inspection report, but when the auditor did review the files, the inspection report was not in that. Now, that does not mean that there wasn't an inspection. It was, you know, for most parts, the inspection was done. It's the fact that the report wasn't necessarily in the file when the review was done. And again, that's something that we're going to focus in on over the next number of months as we address the recommendations from the Auditor General.
Okay, great. Thank you, Matt. So the next question regarding the 27,600 overpayments and then 14,000 in errors. Was this money recouped? How is that being handled?
Through the chair, the great majority of that was recovered by the division. Matt, did you want to expand? Or that's it? Okay. Yes. So it was recovered.
It was recovered. All right, good. That's what the answer I want to hear. Let's see what else I have here. Just 1 second. Just one more thing. I think I heard in the presentation that when there's a miscollection, we have 99% of the service levels that pick up everything, but there's miscollections on the second round to pick up the missed collection. We pick it up 95% of the time. That percentage level of service drops. Are we correcting that? And I would suspect that should be 100%. If the collections, if 200-300 bins were missed, within 24, 48 hours, they should be all picked up.
Yes, Councillor, and that's the goal. So the service standard within the contract is that the contractor has to collect that missed bin within 24 hours, and that's done 95% of the time. And I'd suspect that the last 5% would be done on day 2. But again, that's something that we can continue to strive to get to that 100% with more pushing the contractor to get there.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Chair, last question, and that's all I have. The process for bin replacements, that has changed over the last 2-3 years, because lately we've been having a lot of trouble and people not being able to get their bins replaced in a timely manner like they used to a number of years back.
So, Councillor,
they used to put them up to the curb, and then we go around and pick them up and just switch it. Now it doesn't happen anymore.
We still do that, Councillor, and if there are issues, the residents call 311, and we do have a dedicated group that goes out and either swaps the bins or fixes them, and they do provide the service timeline to the residents, and if there are any that come your way, please send them over and we'll address them immediately.
Perfect. Thank you, man. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Myers.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I just want to go back to the topic of the liquidated damages. So from my understanding, liquidated damages are sums established in contract that are predetermined if a certain member of the contract or the party to the contract does not fulfill their obligations, which is slightly different from what you said, that you said we can't enforce the liquidated damages because we have difficulty showing a loss. So my question is, why is it necessary to show a loss or some sort of injury in order to collect the liquidated damages when clearly the contractor didn't fulfill its obligations under the contract?
So, Councillor, if Legal Services is able to go through that, be more than welcome. But in the meantime, where's legal?
Hi, yes, Councillor, you're correct. I'm here.
Legal?
Yep. Liquidated damages are basically a contractual remedy that if city staff can reasonably demonstrate that something has happened, then the contractor will pay a stipulated amount without the parties having to go to court or arbitration.
Correct. So we don't have to show a loss. We just have to show they didn't fulfill their obligations under the contract.
We have to reasonably demonstrate that something has happened, and then there is a table in the agreement of all of the liquidated damages.
So if a contractor if a contractor misses a street, that should be sufficient to enforce liquidated damages, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that's slightly different than what Matt said, in that he said there had to be some sort of loss shown on the part of the city.
If the city and
why we weren't collecting the liquidated damages when this happened.
So if the liquidated damages need to be a genuine pre-estimate of the damages, and then at that point it would be valid. If the city and the contractors have a contract stipulating the amount, then it would be considered legitimate in court. But we do have to show that we have to reasonably demonstrate that there was a loss.
So in those instances where streets were missed or residents didn't get their garbages picked up, was liquidated damages applied?
I am not sure about that.
No, Councillor, they have not been applied, and that is one of the findings of the Auditor General, is to look at our liquidated damages, how they're developed, how they're put into contracts, and determine what other mechanisms may be in place to recover costs or incentivize contractors where in our experience, liquidated damages have not been able to be used as maybe thought.
So what does the current contract say about liquidated damages in terms of when you can apply them?
So there's a table within the contract for liquidated damages. But again, as legal pointed out, the city has to show that we have, it's cost us money to go rectify that situation. So
that's not what she said. She said that you didn't fulfill the obligation, not that it costs money. So you guys are saying two different things about what liquidated damages means. So that's, I think, where I'm getting confused. So she's saying liquidated damages apply when the party fails to fulfill an obligation under the contract. You're saying liquidated damages apply when there's a cost to the city. Those are two different things. So what's the answer, I guess? What's the answer? And that would help get clarification as to why they weren't applied in those specific instances where the streets were missed or the other individual residences were missed.
Sorry, Councillor, I'm just going to step in here. We would propose going in camera for further legal advice on this topic.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't think it's an in-camera question. Sure, okay.
So, Councillor Myers, did you want to continue with public questions? And if you want, we can go in camera. I don't have a concern with that.
I guess my overall question, I guess this is to the Auditor General, sort of looking at the patterns that we sort of see coming to the Audit Committee, it seems that there's a consistent pattern of problems in contract oversight and management. We saw that with the snow clearing contracts, we saw that with the arborist contracts, we saw that with these contracts. So is there some sort of plan to help city staff remedy these consistent problems which we're finding in the divisions?
Thank you. So through the chair, yes, you're right. As we pointed out in our common themes report this year, this is a common theme for the city to need to improve contract management. And so the city manager has taken on that report and, made it, I believe, made it clear to senior leadership in terms of improvements in this area. I don't know if, Paul, if you wanted to take on or Genevieve wanted to address.
Yes. So it started with our corporate leadership team meeting, 350 of the senior leaders in the organization receiving, and they are required through their meetings to review the report of the Auditor General and understand in their context whether these are issues that apply to them. And we're also talking with people in equity and the appropriate groups to think about how we can produce some training that really gets at the heart of the matters the Auditor General uncovers as additional pieces going forward. But the first step is that it's a requirement that all our divisions and the sections within the divisions review that report and understand how they can comply with it should it apply to the work that they do.
And how are you testing or validating that they are implementing this without the benefit of having gone through an audit? Sorry, last question.
So we'll look at how that compliance with the work goes. We do need to figure out how to produce a regime of performance management around contract management that doesn't require us to use either internal audit or the Auditor General to do that. And that's part of the work plan that we'll have to develop to do a stronger job about it. But it starts with, I think, identifying where in the organization these types of issues exist and how we can better train individuals and hire to those positions first. And then we'll have to look at a general internal compliance with it. With the level of contracts, I can tell you we don't have a straight path to do that because we'll have to look at some additional resources. We've been going under a certain model and it's not working because it keeps coming up as an issue, but we don't have additional internal resources to do something in between an Auditor General report. So we're going to look at how we can get a better compliance rate with the existing resources we have. And I've talked to our CFO and Treasurer too about how we can better utilize internal audit as useful tools around this as well.
Thank you.
Success. Sorry, folks, the temperamental microphone button. Madam Auditor, you wanted to comment to round out the questions, and then we can go to a second round.
I just wanted to comment at a high level in terms of your question on liquidated damages. So we did outline in the report, which has been vetted through legal, that the definition that we've been provided by legal is a per day or per instance reasonable and genuine pre-estimate of the actual damage that will be incurred by the city if the contractor or service provider fails to achieve performance as required. So there are liquidated damages clauses in the contracts for collections. However, we recommended additional accountability mechanisms because the staff aren't able to apply them in the majority of those instances.
And that's because they have to show some sort of loss or injury to the city?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I'm just going to ask our Chief Procurement Officer, and you can say it matches the Auditor General, but could you talk to us perhaps generically how you would advise those that are designing the procurements to set up liquidated damages? Whether or not this contract is aligned with that is a different discussion that we may have to go deeper on, but could you just help the committee understand from a procurement perspective how the city would approach liquidated damages in a contract such as this that's highly operational?
For yourself. So we would look and direct the division to, again, to identify what the costs are to the city for non-performance. As noted by the AG as well as Matt, it has to be a genuine pre-estimate of what it will cost the city to be made whole. So the direction would be, what is it costing us? How can we, if we were in a different situation, rectify the situation? Would we have to get new trucks? What would we have to get more plows? Again, just generically speaking here, what would it actually cost us?
So whether it's garbage collection, snow plow, whatever it is, resident calls in, says this wasn't done, somebody needs to go sort it out. There's all of the administration and 311 calls and extra time that's spent because it's inefficient. And then there's me, the citizen, who's mad and have, at the very least, the city has suffered reputational loss because of that, because I'm an annoyed constituent. Does that all get factored in, or is it a narrower?
It has to be defendable.
Okay.
And it has to be defendable in court. That's the key.
Fair enough. I have a couple of other questions. I'm going to ask Mr. Kelleher first. How do you define a miscollection?
So a miscollection is, well, when a material is not picked up and we get a service request that it was missed.
How do you define a missed street?
So that's a service request with 3 or more homes on a street we classify as a missed street.
Madam Auditor, do you concur, and are those the basis of which you used your report to measure on?
So through you, Chair, that we did use the 311 complaints or service requests as the basis for those numbers that we reported. However, that does mean that the person would need to complain. So it is possible there could be miscollections and the person just didn't complain.
Agreed, but I just want to make sure Madam Auditor, Solid Waste, and 311 all agree on what those things are. Okay. So the 7,000, actually, more basic question. In the report, it talks about there being disagreement on a report of a miscollection from the service provider and the city, and that was a high rate. Could you explain to me what that means? Like, what does that practically mean, that there's some disagreement between the city and the operator?
So in that process, there would be a service request that was put in, and ultimately the material wouldn't have been, or the service request could be closed, and the customer is not satisfied that the service request was met. So one of the pieces that we did after seeing some of those numbers is try to find the root cause of that. And, on a high level example, if in the wintertime a laneway is inaccessible and those individuals call in and put a service request in, what GFL does and what we do is we look and we know that street or laneway was inaccessible. So the SRs are closed out because we are going back tomorrow to pick up that home or that area. What the resident sees, though, however, is that their SR was closed out, and there's a note on file that says, you know, it's a laneway that was not collected during normal collections and when they'll be back. But from a customer perspective, they would log a complaint to that because they see that their miscollection was closed. So for us, what we're able to do from this information is work with 311 and our contractor just to streamline that and maybe leave the SRs open until the work is done the next day in our normal kind of catch-up day with the snowstorms. But that's just a high-level example.
In this investigation, I'm going to take a couple seconds here just so we don't have to go to second round. In this report before us, it focuses on contracted portions of the city, but the city's broad. Can I extend the idea that, is it true that the rates would be similar throughout? Because it's really about not necessarily who picks it up, but the complexity of the operation, trucks rolling around, thousands of bins, complicated things, snowstorms. So it's a generic, these are generic ideas. It's beyond just contracts, although there's a contract management component to this.
Correct.
Okay, could you, and it's, my last question is just, could you talk to me about how myself and the committee could further explore, and it won't be today, but explore what these numbers mean. 7,000 is a big number. 41 streets is a big number. And if you were at the Service Excellence Committee, we'd be all over you saying, you know, what does this mean? Does this mean that, you know, 7,000 instances the driver was looking at their watch and they passed by the bin? Or is there more to the story that, you know, maybe the truck was there, but some reason it didn't get picked up? So how do we begin as a government to drill, or maybe we've already begun, drilling into these numbers to figure out where the patterns are and where the problems are versus situations that something went wrong for whatever reason beyond anyone's control and it just got fixed? So just talk to us for a moment about how we figure all that out, because it's across the city.
Yeah, so you know, one of the pieces that we have and we can provide at any point in time, potentially to Service Excellence Committee or potentially within our analyst notes in our budget each year, is not just focusing in on the miscollection, but also identify some of the root causes in terms of the feedback from not just the resident, but from the contractors and staff on the rationale why it was missed. And, you know, some of those miscollections are due to weather, they're due to new staff, they're due to the bin or the item was maybe behind a car and they didn't see that bin. So there's issues that or information that we can glean from that to continually improve our service. And we are more than happy to share that either with Service Excellence Committee or a report to IEC or through the budget process.
Thank you. Are there further questions from the members? Councillor Meyer, second round.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just if I can get Madam Auditor General to clarify recommendation 4A, which says ensure that liquidated damages categories included in future collection service provider contracts meet the criteria for SWMS staff to be able to apply them effectively, as well as explore incorporating other contractual accountability mechanisms that can be utilized more effectively for contract management purposes. So could you just unpack a bit what that actually means in terms of practice, in terms of what we would expect to change for liquidated damages based on the discussion that we've just had?
So through the chair, just a reminder, we looked at 3 different types of contracted areas. And so for collections, I mentioned that it's more challenging to apply the liquidated damages clause because of that predetermined amount to, you know, needs to be there, is my understanding. But there's other areas too where, you know, there could be improvements made. So this recommendation is getting at having a look at the contracts to make sure that there's accountability mechanisms that will help to improve contractor performance, whether that be improving the liquidated damages where it can apply or other accountability mechanisms such as key performance indicators and performance targets.
Thank you. So to clarify, is your recommendation, leading us to the direction where, liquidated damages are applied if you miss the street? Just yes or no? You either missed it or you didn't.
Through the chair, that's a legal question, whether that can be done.
Is that in camera or? Okay. I can get my answer offline then.
Are there further questions? Councillor Nunziata, go ahead.
About the missed collection. Do we know the missed collection that you've reported? Are they the same streets and same homes? Like, maybe there's a problem where the bins are located. Do you know that? Or are there different streets and different...
Yeah, I don't have the information right at hand.
Okay.
It's something we can look at, and I know our operations crew, when they see miscollections come up maybe for a home 2 times in a row, it's maybe
There's
just
a
that...
problem, because I know I've received complaints where somebody would say, this is the 3rd time it hasn't been collected. And I say, well, there must be a problem, right? And so just wondering if there's an issue in some areas where they don't collect or they don't know what the street names are or where the homes are. Would it help, though, like we do for snow removal, that after collection that we have somebody that drives around just to make sure all the collection was done that day?
Yeah, so we have road
Rather
crews
than
out
missed.
there,
Yeah.
Councillor, that if they do see bins that have been missed, they do call the route supervisors to get the trucks out there. And we do have some homes that, for one reason or another are missed a couple times in a row. And when we flag them when we find out about them, they're flagged, and then there's additional care to make sure that they're not missed moving forward. But again, the root cause for that could be that there's a new home, or they canceled service while they went on vacation and they came back and they didn't restart it, or different reasons. And we can definitely get a list of those.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Any further questions? Was there any desire to go into camera? I see not. Okay, members wishing to speak.
Speak briefly, so I'll move the recommendations, and we heard from staff that you support the recommendations from the auditor, and thank you for that, and thank you for the presentation. And so, I do agree that there has to be some changes in that, but I can tell you that in my ward, that whenever there's been a complaint, we call staff directly, no go to 311, and it is corrected immediately. So I want to thank you for that. But there are the parts of the city where it's not. So just thank you for that, and I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Any further speaking? I'll make a brief comment myself. Thank you for the report, and to staff for working on it. We talked a lot about collections, and that's natural. I think it's $6.81 for an extra garbage tag to put on a plastic bag if your garbage didn't get picked up. So you can bet if a homeowner doesn't have the can tipped over and the garbage gone, they're going to be really upset, because the city made a choice to constrain people and say, you get this container once every 2 weeks. And if you have more than that, too bad, you got to pay. In the olden days, I guess, if the collection was missed, the garbage truck came around next time and there was just twice as much, and it is what it is, right? So it's sensitive, and people pay a lot for their taxes and for their utilities, and they want to see the service. I do take some positive, as Councillor Nunziata mentioned, despite all of the thousands and thousands of pickups that go on all over the city, but I'll talk about Ward 2 in Etobicoke, I get some calls, but not a lot, about solid waste. And that tells me a lot, right? I know there may be a lot of calls to 311, and it's all relative to the overall operations, but an even fewer number come to me as a counselor as an escalation point. And I think that's a good news story because it means that the system by and large works. It may not be perfect, but by and large it works. I think they're fascinating insights into the information. We spent a lot of time at the Service Excellence Committee talking about this stuff, and that's why I asked the questions about, how do you dig into the numbers further to find out what's going on? But that's a conversation for another day. Today, we're talking about contract management. Really, that's what this report is about. And that's another theme that comes back to this committee. So I encourage and I am very positive about the response about how to improve the contract management because there's a lot of dollars behind this, but it ultimately leads to services. So I very much appreciated on this. There is a component that has to do with the collection, and then there's the component about the things that we don't normally talk or think about, which is the enormous capital works that go on to support a really big solid waste management system, and whether those are transfer stations or organics processing or whatever it is that's part of the big system, it's hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars worth of infrastructure that really matter about keeping the city alive and running. So naturally, we want to see the people that look after that have the best processes in place to deal with the dollars that flow through. So my appreciation. With that, any other members to speak on it? Seeing none on the motion to adopt from Councillor Nunziata, all in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you, everyone. Our next item is AU 13.8, which is the audit of the city's administrative penalty system for parking and red light camera violations. Madam Auditor General has a presentation for us, so I'll invite her back to the front of the room and allow a moment or two for everyone to get in place and things connected, and invite you, Madam Auditor, to begin as soon as you're ready. Sorry, to those following the meeting, we're just getting some technical connections sorted out. We'll be getting started in just a moment.
And you got your notes. We're ready, Chair. Okay. Thank you, Chair. This presentation summarizes the results from our audit of the city's administrative penalty system for parking and red light camera violations. I'd like to acknowledge my team who are with me today for their excellent work on this audit. Ariane Chan, Matthew Christofoli, Tom Fitzmaurice, and Ivy Yang. We'd like to express our sincere appreciation for the cooperation and assistance we received from the Court Services, Legal Services, and Revenue Services divisions, particularly Diane Cassius, Kelly Chapman, and John Longarini. Next slide. Our presentation will outline why this audit matters, our audit objectives, key audit findings and recommendations, followed by my closing remarks. The administrative penalty system was established with the goal of being a more efficient method for people to be able to dispute their parking violations than the court system. It also freed up capacity within the court system for more serious violations. In 2025, the APS processed approximately 2.2 million parking and red light camera penalties with over 430,000 new disputes. This audit matters because timely processes deter reoffense and promote compliance with traffic bylaws and regulations for road safety. I'll now pass it over to Ariane Chan, Assistant Auditor General.
Thank you, Madam Auditor General. The objective of this audit was to assess whether the administrative penalty system is achieving its intended benefits in supporting dispute resolution and payment collection in accordance to city bylaw and regulations. Our audit aimed to answer the following questions. 1, are parking and red light camera screening processes timely? 2, is there timely collection of penalty amounts and fees due? And finally, are performance indicators and data analytics regularly used to monitor performance, inform management decisions, and report on program effectiveness? We did not examine the issuance process, as this was outside the administrative penalty system. We also did not examine the appropriateness of decision-making, as this is a matter of the law. Our audit identified opportunities for improvement in 3 areas. We will briefly highlight the key audit findings and recommendations for each. The first area is to improve timeliness of screening reviews. Time to screening measures how long the screening review process takes and is measured from the date a disputer requests a screening review to the date a screening officer renders their decision. As the figure on the top shows, the average time to screening for parking penalties was 252 days, or over 8 months in 2025, and shows an increasing trend. This significantly exceeds all forecasts when the APS was launched. Further, there is no target in place to specify how long the time to screening should be to compare actual results against. Under the court system in 2016, the average time to trial was 225 days, but this did not consider those parking infractions that could not be scheduled for a court date and were canceled due to insufficient court capacity. According to a committee submission, the full previous court process took an average of 18 months. So it is not accurate to say that the APS is taking longer than the previous court process for parking violations. However, the screening review process for parking is quite lengthy and needs improvement. A substantial screening request backlog is the main cause of the high and increasing time to screening for parking penalties. The number of screening requests for parking penalties outpaced screening dispositions since as far back as 2022, creating a large backlog that prevents timely screenings. The figure at the bottom shows annual backlog growth per year from 2022 to 2025. The total backlog grew by over 247,000 screening requests since 2022. This is approximately 68% of total screening dispositions in 2025, which represents about an 8-month workload. We do not have the total backlog since APS inception. due to data limitations of the legacy system. Multiple factors contributed to screening delays and backlogs, including 1, the increased likelihood of someone disputing the penalty due to increased penalty amounts and increased financial hardship. 2, incomplete screening request submissions, requiring screening officers to spend time contacting disputers for missing documents, increasing the time needed to render a decision. 3, technical issues with the legacy system in 2023, which prevented screening officers from viewing some submitted files to render the decisions, delaying decisions for effective penalties. And finally, staff turnover and the need for a detailed staffing analysis. To the credit of the APS management and staff, efforts were made to address screening delays and backlogs. For example, as shown in the figure, the average number of screening decisions per officer increased each year from 2022 to 2025. Management attributes this increased productivity to factors such as internal process improvements and authorized overtime. Unlike parking, we found that the red light camera penalties were generally screened in a timely manner, with an average time to screening of 48 days. This is because there was no initial backlog to delay them, as they were added to the APS in 2025. In addition, APS uses its new case management system for red light camera penalties. APS management aims to use this system for parking penalties starting in 2027, which is expected to enable faster screening reviews. I will now pass it over to Tom for the second area.
Thank you, Ariane. The second area of our key audit findings relates to collecting penalty amounts and fees due. We found that the APS did not always use its available tools as soon as possible to encourage timely payment and to penalize delinquency. Out of approximately $660 million in penalties and fees collectible, about $216 million remained outstanding at the end of 2025. The pie charts on the slide summarize the portion of undisputed and disputed parking penalties by their payment status at the end of the year. The left pie chart shows that for about 6.5 million undisputed parking penalties, 79% were paid. About half were paid late, by an average of 109 days. 21% remained unpaid at the end of the year. Of these, almost all were overdue, by an average of 581 days. The right pie chart shows that for over 1 million disputed parking penalties, just over half were resolved and paid by the end of the year. However, about a quarter of these were paid late, by an average of 249 days. 20% were resolved but remained unpaid at the end of 2025. Of these, about 80% were considered overdue by an average of 406 days. Regarding late or missed use of collection tools, we estimated that an additional $1.8 million in address search fees, $4.9 million in late fees, and $767,000 in plate denial enforcement fees could have been applied over the audit period. Management advised that collection tools were not always used at the earliest opportunity due to uncontrollable factors such as postal strikes, receiving delayed information from the province, and issues with its legacy information system. With respect to red light camera penalties, out of about $43 million in collectible fees and penalties and fees, about $18 million, or 41%, remained outstanding at the end of 2025. This is due, at least in part, because there are currently no consequences for not paying a red light camera penalty. The pie charts summarize the portion of undisputed and disputed red light camera penalties by their payment status for penalties issued in 2025. The left pie chart shows that for about 98,700 undisputed penalties, about 1/3 were unpaid at the end of the year. Of these, about 3/4 were overdue by an average of 135 days. The right pie chart shows that for about 32,800 disputed penalties, just over 1/3 were resolved and paid, 30% were resolved but were not paid at the end of the year. Of these, about 67% were considered overdue by an average of 108 days. And just over 1/3 were disputed and awaiting a screening or hearing decision at the end of the year. The third area is to improve performance monitoring and reporting. The APS program has not yet established a performance framework to set targets, measure progress against them, and assess its overall performance. Effective performance monitoring is crucial for the city to assess whether the APS is operating efficiently, achieving its intended benefits in supporting dispute resolution and payment collection, and adapting effectively to a changing regulatory and operational environment. The new case management system mentioned earlier should enable improved monitoring and reporting for parking penalties. It will allow staff to easily filter data, generate reports, and customize dashboards. I'll now pass it back to the Auditor General for her closing remarks.
Thank you, Tom. Implementing the 5 recommendations in this report will strengthen the effectiveness, efficiency, and oversight of the administrative penalty system by improving the completeness of screening submissions so reviews can be completed faster, enhancing the use of collection tools to improve the completeness and timeliness of their use while increasing consequences for delayed payment, and finally, enhancing performance monitoring by adding key performance indicators with clearly defined targets to measure the degree to which the APS is achieving intended outcomes, further enhanced by leveraging the new information system. Management agreed to all the recommendations, and their response and action plans are included in Appendix 1 of the report. That concludes our presentation. I'll now pass it back to you, Chair, and we're available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. I'll ask if there's questions of staff from the members of the committee. Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, thank you. The red light camera, I'm on page 5, if you don't mind going back to your deck. So I'm unclear how they're able to be disputed because the actual license plate is shown. So the vehicle and the picture are quite clear. So could you just explain how there's so many disputed ones, please?
So through the chair, I'll start off and then pass it over to management. People are allowed to dispute for any reason that they would have. It could be a stolen vehicle, or there could be other reasons. Management, if you'd like to further clarify.
So can you break that down, what the disputes are for red light cameras?
I'll defer to management.
Sorry, can't hear you.
My apologies. I don't have the exact number of how many are disputed for different reasons because we don't track that, but I can indicate that there are a number that are from stolen vehicles. We have some that are disputed not for the purposes of disputing that the offense occurred, but to request time to pay or to request an adjustment in the amount to pay based on their financial circumstances. So there are several reasons. But at the core, through any administrative law or quasi-criminal law process, everyone is entitled to dispute the issuance and challenge that.
Okay, let's talk about the word dispute. If you aren't able to pay, then is that really disputed? I'll ask the deputy city manager. Or is that you're asking for a leniency for a particular reason? Dispute to me is, that's not my car, that wasn't me. How are you delineating between those kinds of things? It doesn't appear that you are.
So in this case, the dispute would be about the penalty itself, the assessment of the penalty and the appropriateness of it in that instance.
So are they saying they didn't do it, or are they saying that there's reasons why they need more time? So they're not really disputing the fact it was them. The word dispute, I guess I'm just going to go up to top. Auditor General, is that, what does dispute mean?
If I might just add something, sometimes we get people disputing because they say they weren't driving the car. The law doesn't consider that an offense, but an individual will say, well, somebody else borrowed the car. You can't hold me responsible for that. Sometimes we have other rationales for it. It could be a business vehicle that someone used. There are a number of reasons why someone may choose dispute, but the enabling regulation describes all of these matters as an appeal and therefore a dispute. So we're using the language that's consistent with the enabling legislation set by the province.
You're choosing to use that language, or you're required to use that language.
The regulation permitting us to use it calls it an appeal. We're using the word dispute instead of appeal, but it is considered an appeal under the Highway Traffic Act regulation enabling the APPS process.
I'm still having trouble with that, Mr. Chair. So the numbers associated with each of these, just on page 3, we have, is that 2022 on the left side and 2025, or are they all the same on your graph?
To clarify, so you're talking about the slide for the red light camera?
Yeah, if we go back to page 5, because this is your report. This is the Auditor General's report. Yep.
Sorry, your question
Talk to me
again.
about those 2 slides, please.
So through the chair, so the left pie chart is the undisputed penalties. So they received the violation and they're choosing to pay it, but some are overdue. And then on the right side, that pie chart is for those who have disputed the penalty and are going through the administrative penalty system.
So they're delinquent, 21%, just not paid. Like this word dispute, I'm having some trouble with how you're allowing it to be used, actually.
So to clarify, the word dispute, it could be they're disputing the amount and not just whether or not they feel that they did it.
But it says it's undisputed, 21%.
Yeah, go ahead.
Undisputed means nobody said anything, just haven't paid it.
Sorry, for the left pie graph, these are the penalties that the person did not request a screening review. They didn't ask for it to be canceled or varied or anything like that. These are not disputed penalties. The right one encompasses all the penalties that were disputed. So these could either be a penalty that is where they request a screening review, they have it resolved, they fully pay it, they request a screening review and it's in process.
I get that. We're talking about dispute. And the numbers on each side, please fill in the actual numbers, not the percentages.
So again, through the chair, just over 1/3 of the disputed ones were resolved and paid. 30% were resolved but not paid at the end of the year. And of those, about 67% were considered overdue by an average of 108 days. And then just over 1/3 were disputed and awaiting a screening or hearing decision at the end of 2025.
Sorry, that's not my question. It's the actual numbers, not the percentages, the numbers.
Oh, the numbers of the disputes. Okay, do you have
The
that
numbers
breakdown?
of undisputed and fully paid, the numbers of not fully paid.
Okay, through the chair, we'd have to get back to you on the numbers. The total was 32,800, so.
Can somebody look those up while we do some additional rounds of questions? Because I had the same question. Or at least try, and that may be something for court services, because they're just numbers. Can we do another counselor, please? Is there other questions of this? Because I'm going to go ahead and ask. Okay.
Oh, Chair, just to clarify, it's red light camera or parking for the question, for the number?
I'll tell you what, let me start with my questions, and you tell me whatever you can answer. If not, we might be able to find the numbers. So my first question, on this screen, I see it's parking penalties. That's the most. What's the gross number of parking penalties for the 2025 year end? How many do these pie charts collectively represent? It was 2.2 million for everything, so how many are these? How many parking penalties do we have in 2025? I'm sure it's here somewhere.
Through the chair, through yourself, I mean, there was roughly parking penalties of about 2 million.
Okay, so those two pie charts represent 2 million. On the left, of the 2 million, how many are those undisputed? How many are undisputed out of 2 million? Okay, what I'll do is I'll
Through the chair, sorry, it would be roughly about 1.58 million undisputed.
1.58 million. Okay, and so the balance would be 420,000 are disputed. 420,000 represents the right side, the pie chart on the right.
It would represent the amount that are unpaid.
How many, okay, so how many of the 2 million parking penalties end up getting disputed in some way, shape, or form? Because I know there's a bunch of steps.
Through the chair, these penalties represent 4 years worth of parking penalties, not just 2025. So the left chart, this encompasses 6.51 million in undisputed penalties. The right one is 1.08 million disputed penalties. So it's not just the 1 year we're looking at.
Okay,
Yeah.
so can someone suggest where I could go look and find out on an annual basis, not aggregated, how many penalties are disputed and not? I don't need the numbers right now. I just need to know where to go look.
Through the chair, that would be provided in the APS activity report. We tabled one earlier
Government
this year.
management, right. Okay, thank you. Can anyone tell me of the disputed penalties in a given year, and I realize there's some transition now in new reporting, how many of them relate to someone that is disputing the amount for payment? Even just a general sense, is it? Or where I would go look for that?
Through the chair, I'm not sure that information is available with the legacy system. I'll defer to management if there's anything to add.
If I could provide some guidance, I don't think we separate the dispute, whether it's disputing the ticket or the financial person in this legacy system, because I don't think we're able to. However, most people who dispute everything. They'll start by disputing the ticket and then also add, but then I want to dispute the amount payment. And if you're not going to do that, then I'm also going to say I want time to pay. They usually put everything in the basket, hoping that they're successful on something.
Fair enough. And that leads to my final question is just, could someone tell me a little bit about the work that's done by a screening officer? I don't know a lot about the system. I haven't gone through it myself. So could you tell me, does it all happen online? Do they face the person? Is there a dialogue back and forth? Could you just tell me a little bit about the work? And then most importantly is what is the guidance that the management team provides to that officer so that there's quality and consistency between the different screening officers? How does that process work? Because it's a mystery, right? You appeal to some place and something happens and then here's the finding, but I suspect there's far more sophistication. Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
I'd be happy to try to share that information with you. So when we first started the screening process for parking in 2017, we had the option to go online or people could come in person. We found that some people insisted on coming in person and spending a fair bit of time at our counters arguing with staff, trying to negotiate a settlement, thinking that it was a bargaining process. That obviously takes a lot of time. Addressing a dispute is not a bargaining process per se. We're supposed to be looking at the law and whether or not the offense occurred. There were certain changes made to the processes during COVID, where now we moved to an online system, which was the principal's system. If someone cannot access the online system, they can still come to an in-person location. We might assist them in filling out the paperwork, but they fill out the paperwork. If they need an interpreter, we have an interpreter line to assist them as well. Then we input that material into the system and a screening officer will look at it afterwards. If they've given us any oral information as well, the screening officer will add that to the screening request for the other person who's going to review that. They then go through the file and review the issues raised, first dealing with whether or not the parking penalty issued is correct on its face and meets the basic requirements. Then they will go through what the disputer has raised as to why they don't believe it was accurate. They may provide photos of various things. They may provide other information. Then we would move, once that issue is dealt with, to, well, actually I should just point out, like, they may provide like a paid parking receipt from a GreenP, for example. If they do that, we have the ability to connect into the GreenP app and verify the receipt that they've given us to check that that's happened. Staff can also see previous disputes from the individual, which has been very important in some cases, where we have found that documents have been coming back to us which have been altered by the public. That doesn't happen often, but it does happen sometimes. So we can catch those issues. And then they'll go through the financial piece if they've raised a financial piece. They are required to provide documentation to substantiate their financial hardship, and then that will be reviewed before a decision is issued.
Thank you. I'll ask if there's other members. Councillor Nunziata.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to hear about COVID, but my only question is, please tell me in the dollar amount on parking tickets and red light cameras, what is the total amount that we've lost in revenue? I don't want to hear percentage. I want to know the total amount that we've lost in revenue.
Through the chair to clarify, we haven't lost any revenue. That 230
Well, you've
million,
lost it if you haven't collected it.
well, it's currently it's in plate denial. So ideally through that plate denial process of updating, those fines will have to be paid at the ministry before they can update their license plate information. They collect that for us and remit it back to the city.
If I might just add to be of assistance.
But we have lost revenue. If nobody pays, we lose revenue. And how long does it take for us to get that revenue from the province? I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me, yeah.
The 230 million, like as identified, it's sort of, it's outstanding, it's as unpaid, but we haven't waived the ticket, we haven't lost that revenue, we just haven't received payment for it.
Exactly,
so
and and probably you will never collect that payment.
We do over years, Councillor, we eventually do hit a high level of compliance, over 95%. It just does take some time with some individuals to the point where they aren't able to renew their plate, of which they can be fined and ticketed by the province. And then, but they do collect, like monthly, we do receive remittances in excess of $2 million from the province who are collecting these outstanding fines on our behalf.
So is there a problem with the backlog that we have? Is staffing?
If I might just sort of provide a response to assist in understanding. So there are multiple factors that have impacted the delay. One of which was that there's been an increase in the number of violations issued. The second one is the increase in the penalty amounts, which has driven more people into disputes, which has increased the dispute rate. And then the third thing is there have been some challenges with staffing, not because we don't have people who want to come to work for us, because we're a great place to work and one of the best employers there are, but because our positions start at an entry level, there's a lot of movement. So when you have a lot of movement, you're constantly doing staffing because people are progressing within our office to higher level positions that pay more. So that is an issue that has contributed to it, as well as some issues with the legacy computer system in 2023, which was the biggest impetus of the delay. I think we need to remember that this is an old system that was built in 1995, custom to the city, and it is not too surprising that by the 2020s, there were some issues. We've worked very closely with our colleagues in the technology services working on those problems. But it did take a lot of time to work through those problems. There was two significant problems. Some documents that people were submitting online weren't getting named and attached properly, so we had difficulty finding them, and sometimes their submissions weren't included, which meant staff, in order to provide proper service on behalf of the city, had to reach out to each of these individuals to try and get that information, which was very time-consuming.
Thank you. Further questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have, I'm sorry, I think you went, I just have one question if I have a moment.
Yeah, no, entirely in order, Councillor Crisanti. I can't see you at the moment because the presentation was on the screen, but please go ahead.
Oh, I could see you. Everybody looks good there today. All right, thank you.
There you are.
There you go. So just one, maybe two questions. The $18 million penalty outstanding, does that include disputed amounts? And I believe earlier, I'll do it all in one question. You mentioned it was mentioned in the presentation that there are no consequences to collect that money, and that's part of the reason why there's still 18 million sitting on the books. And over what period of time? There it is, all in one bundle.
So through the chair, the 18 million is specific to the red light camera penalties.
Yes.
And it is, those started in 2025, so that is just for 2025. And and I would say that it's the delay in the collection would be partly due to the fact that there's currently no consequences for not paying it.
And does that 18 million include the disputed amounts?
Is it? One second.
There's a number.
Yes, it does.
It does. And I'm sorry, then I follow up here. No, you said no consequences. Are there consequences that could be looked at that could be applied in order to motivate people to pay if they've legitimately gone through red lights? Obviously, if people know this now, we're talking about it publicly, people are going to say, well, I went through a red light, doesn't matter, I don't have to pay. That's quite concerning.
So through the chair, there are consequences for the parking violation. So I believe management is looking at consequences for red light. I'll turn it over to them.
Yes, to the chair, there are consequences for red light camera. It's a matter of integration with the provincial system. So we are working closely with Ministry of Transportation and Attorney General, and we hope to have that integration, technical integration, dealt with within the next month or so.
Well, okay, that's I think good news. And however, we've had the red light cameras for many, many years, and now we're coming to a point where we're introducing the consequences, which will, of course, make it a legitimate in the sense that now people will have those consequences if they don't pay. Obviously, once the consequences are active, then I think this will be more of a penalty that will reduce reduce red light drivers driving through red lights. So another month, when can you let us know when this will happen?
Yes, Councillor. So there have always been penalties for red light camera automated speed under the courts. This is just a move to the administrative penalty system. And so that dispute process, which is actually outlined by the province, they say we can only use plate denial as opposed to collections agencies, which is something we used under the courts. This new process will be wrapped up hopefully by the end of the summer.
All right, fair. Thank you.
Further questions from other members? Okay, second round.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Fletcher.
Yeah, I just want to get a couple of things really clear. Just how everybody reports up. I see Deputy City Manager here. I understand that City Legal. Maybe you could tell us how that works, that system. Who goes where? Who's the ultimate person that oversees each
Legal
of these
Services
actions?
has a prosecutions unit. Within that unit is the administrative penalty screening section, and Court Services handles the tribunal. Both of those report to me as City Solicitor. And then collections
which ones again, please? Sorry.
The screening.
Administrative screening reports to the City Solicitor. Yep.
Yes, and the tribunal is administered by Court Services, and the Executive Director of Court Services reports to me. We've also been discussing revenue. Revenue Services reports to the Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer.
So the revenue goes there. Deputy City Manager, maybe I missed seeing her there. Oh, I missed her. Oh, and you are. I'm wondering what Ms. Basil's role is there, but not on this.
So, Chair, there is no Deputy City Manager. The top accountability for Court Services and the other work that the City Solicitor is with the City Solicitor. That was a change in structure that was done more than a year ago.
So the City Solicitor is in charge of everything, and the City CFO is in charge of revenue. That's it.
That's correct.
And so tracking and everything else, that's through your division, the City Solicitor. So this
The
report
tracking
really
for the
is about
screening
you.
is something we would manage. Court Services would do other tracking, and actually Court Services does have a general oversight role regarding this program.
Yeah, I'm just looking at
So
who
any
ultimately
reports,
who
annual
ultimately
reports?
has the oversight is you.
Yes, except for the collections.
Yeah, except for the money, that's it. And then, so all of the functions are there, and then the revenue part falls to the CFO, who I'm sure is interested in collecting more of it, as Councilor Nunziata has said. So that's one question. Then I'm just wondering, I understood, but maybe not clearly, that the red light cameras, that the province has the ability to say you have an outstanding red light camera fine, and that can impact your renewal of what? Your license? Or it doesn't?
The renewal of your vehicle plate.
Your VIN, your plate, which now...
Your license plate.
The license plate, which is now required, no money, but you're required to do that, correct? Online.
You are required to do it online. The province did do away with the fees for it, but you are still required to go online to renew it, and you cannot do so if you have outstanding penalties.
And so how many outstanding penalties are there? There's 17.7 million outstanding dollars still to be paid on red light cameras. What does that represent in numbers of tickets?
Through the chair, I believe it's approximately 132,000.
132,000, and that's representing the 33% or not? Because you've got disputed and awaiting decisions. So really and truly, if I'm looking at the pie chart on page 5, it's what's just paid up, period, full stop, is 35%.
Through the chair, correct.
So that's what's paid up in red light, and what's outstanding in red light is 55%. And that includes, that's 132,000 of them?
The data provided in the AG's report, I believe, is a span of over a number of years, right? It's not just 2025, so.
But they're still outstanding. So I'm just talking about total outstanding, unless the AG wants to weigh in. Doesn't matter if it's still outstanding.
For red light camera only came online in the administrative penalty system last year. So they've been outstanding since January 2025. The rest of it is parking, which has been in place since 2017.
No, I'm looking at page 5 that you have put uncollected red light camera penalties has its own pie chart, unless I'm wrong, Chair. Page 5. You've got it right there. No, right here.
On the slide deck, correct?
I'll ask you, Ms. Anderson.
Page 10. Okay.
I am asking the auditor.
Okay, sorry, and just to clarify, you're looking at the slide deck?
I'm
That's what
looking
you're
at the
referring
slide
to?
deck that you handed out,
The red light camera.
0709-2026, page 5, 2 sets of pie charts. One is improved collection of penalty amounts and fees due. The second is improved, but it is uncollected red light camera penalties, partly due to lack of consequences. Are those pie charts related solely to red light camera penalties, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Now we're going to get the numbers. That's what I'm trying to find out. So only 35% have been paid. I don't care if it's for 100 years or whatever, that's all that's been paid of 132,000 tickets. Is that correct?
So through the chair, for the disputed ones, the 35% have been paid. For the undisputed, 67% have been paid.
Yes, but the total number of tickets has to include those that are paid, and those that are in some kind of dispute, whether they're in review or simply dispute. So I need to understand your pie chart because they're two different things. What is the value of the 35% and the 67%?
Do you have that handy? I'll need to get back to you on that, sorry. I don't have that handy right now.
Further questions, and we'll do a third as necessary. I'm going to ask one. Earlier, I heard a response about a question about trying to break down the number of disputes that relate to the amount. And I'd say that that was proceeding to a financial hardship argument. What I heard back was what I'm going to characterize in my own words is the throw spaghetti against the wall strategy of to see what sticks, right? There are many, many arguments. And my question is there an opportunity on the intake process to more tightly define what the argument or the defense is so that the intake could involve triage and route those types of discussions to specialists? So if it was a financial discussion, there could be a financial specialist screening officer, and and could that create efficiency? And I would like to hear a response or a thought on that potential, or maybe you do that.
Okay, so we're working with two different systems. Under parking, our ability to pick through and assign things under the current system, which is being changed, is not as robust. Under the new system that parking will be moving to, which red light camera is in, we have the opportunities to do a kind of triage, and we can pick through those arguments. However, we cannot limit the amount of items that an individual brings. We have a robust system that we've worked on with technology services so that the intake form indicates every item of what they're disputing. So we know that to assign it to the screening officers who have the ability to do that. So we do that with the new system. As much as we can, we do it in the old system, but that is part of our process.
So to play that back, the screening intake process, I think, is tracking towards something with more predictability. So instead of having a random or a surprise discussion with someone, everything is laid out at the outset, and then that allows staff to triage and steer the analysis to those that are the most efficient at it. And could that potentially help reduce the backlog?
Well, one of the reasons that we wanted to wait to come to council on the two questions, which I think are very important, which one is what is the service level that council determines is appropriate for how much time someone should be waiting for these disputes, and how much time it will take us in the new system is getting the new system up and running. Until we have it up and running, we don't have experience on how parking will track in that system and how many screening officers will need to do that efficiently. So those are things that we are tracking to and wanting to look at. I just wanted to remind everyone that the 2-month period was an estimate that we provided as to what our thoughts were. There's nothing that requires us to have screenings done within 2 months, and council has not been asked to turn its mind to what it feels is the appropriate service level, and that will be brought forward to City Council next year.
One other question, can anyone tell me if there are a category of paralegal or let's call them super users or pro users that access this system on a highly frequent basis, either because they incur a lot of tickets or because they are specialists in helping people navigate? Does that exist?
There are some paralegals who do this work. We have found over time that less and less people are using paralegals because it's very user-friendly and easy to access, and the fees that a lot of paralegals charge are higher. But there are still paralegals that do use charge people and do entries into the process. We do not track them differently. We do not treat them differently. We don't put them in a different screening. Whether you're representing yourself or a paralegal, it goes through the same process, and we would assign it based on the arguments and the submissions.
Do the paralegal submissions require more or less work? I know it's a general question, but do you find that the paralegals are able to structure these so that they may be processed more efficiently?
I don't think we found any significant difference.
Fair enough.
The
Thank you.
system was built to be user-friendly and accessible to the public.
Thank you. Further questions from members of the committee? Councillor Fletcher.
I'll just have them here. The total number of red light tickets is 132,000? I heard that number. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes? Thank you. And so then the number that were paid and the amount, and the number under dispute and the amount of foregone revenue.
So the amount collected on those penalties was 25.4 million. 17.7 million remains uncollected as of the end of 2025. As for the numbers, they're broken down by disputed and undisputed.
It's fair. I'm sorry. It's really hard. I don't think it's. This room isn't great acoustically. Could you repeat that last one, please?
Sure. So the out of the penalties issued, about 25.4 million has been collected. About 17.7 million remains uncollected on those red light camera penalties.
Okay, thank you. And the red light cameras would be throughout the whole city of Toronto. Would I be right? Everywhere where they are.
Through the chair, yes.
And have you reported out and shown where the penalties are coming from generally? All the former cities? Hot spots?
If I might be of assistance, I think Transportation Services regularly reports out those numbers. I do think we have colleagues from Transportation Services here.
Yeah, I'm not really looking for numbers. I'm looking for a map. Got to hold my time. I did. Did you? You're good. Thank you.
Yes, so through the chair, we do release all of our camera locations and the number of violations at each location on an annual basis.
Do you have a heat map of some kind for those red light cameras that you've created?
We don't post it that way, but we certainly could.
So
we do note our top 10 locations on an annual basis.
But you could do that heat map for council.
We could do that heat map, yes.
Between now and city council. Yes?
We will endeavor to do it for city council.
Great. So we just kind of see where things are happening. Do I need to move a motion for that, Mr. Chair? Which I can.
Would staff agree to an undertaking to maybe clarify, Councillor Fletcher, let me just pause your time. Would you be happy with a briefing note, or do you want a report appended to this?
No, I just wanted attached here that this is where they all are across the city. So.
Okay, we'll get a motion for
Thank
a
you.
supplementary report on a map.
Just so we see that, because I'm going to have another one. But that is really, that's across the city, but we don't really know. We know you're not top 10, but we don't really know where all the pockets might be, unless it's secret information. Is it secret? There's no more red light cameras, so it's not secret anymore.
There are red light cameras.
Sorry, I meant speed cameras,
Yes, it's not secret. We publish this, and we do publish it for every location in the city on an annual basis.
I'm just interested visually. And because I'm going to go to Green P, I'm going to go to parking penalties. So the parking fines are from where? From Green P Street and Green P lots. Would I be right? As well as permit parking. Are there any other than that?
If I might be of assistance on that, through you, Chair. The parking penalties are issued in a variety of places, including on private property through MLEOs that are licensed through MLS. So parking penalties are not only issued on City of Toronto streets, in Green P parking lots, but also in private lots.
And the percentage on private lots compared to public streets and green P businesses?
I don't have that number.
50%? How about the revenues from that? I wonder if the CFO would have an idea.
To the chair, I don't have the breakdown between the different lots at this time.
Because there's revenues from green P lots, there's revenues from green P street, and there's revenues from permit parking, correct? That you would have as the CFO.
To the chair, so there would be revenues collected through permit parking,
Yes.
separate than fines. In terms of the penalties, you would have penalties as it relates to.
Not talking about penalties yet, just revenues.
So there would be revenues coming from paid parking within our Green P facilities. There would be permit parking. And then in addition to that would be where we collect fine revenue.
And then there's a revenue stream for tickets, which is separate.
Yes, that's correct.
So just we are agreeing there's a revenue stream for purchasing of parking of any kind. And where is that? Outside of, I'm still waiting for the percentage that are on private lots that are tickets. And I think you should have that. Do you have that, Madam Auditor General? Do you have any idea?
No, I don't have that at this time. Sorry.
Do you have that number yet, percentage?
Through the chair, that category accounted for about 388,000 parking penalty notices in 2025, which was a little bit of...
388,000 in parking penalties for private property.
Correct.
MLS. And what's the number for parking tickets? Green P, lot, street, permit parking tickets.
I think overall it was about 2 million, 2.2 overall.
Revenue? Mr. CFO?
Private is just under 20%.
Pardon me, can't hear.
The private parking is just under 20%, so it's about 18.9%.
Sorry, what's private parking?
That would be parking on private property.
Pardon me?
Parking on private property.
Not front yard parking, parking on private property.
Such as in commercial lots, if your local mall that has parking limited only to customers, at the university, where you have to pay to get a permit to park at the university, those types of locations.
So commercial and institutional lots.
That would be a big portion. Apartment buildings who only allow parking for visitors that have signed in, that would be another one.
Okay, this is all news. Okay, government, you have that report?
If it might be of assistance, the annual report has an attachment to it that we do on activity that outlines by ticket type exactly how many tickets were issued. So there's details provided every year.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, I was asking about the revenue. That revenue isn't coming to the city.
Yes, it is. All the revenue.
No, revenue in order to buy parking. Different than a ticket. There's two types. There's revenue from buying and revenue from ticketing.
Last question.
Well, I need somebody to answer that.
To the speaker, I'll jump in. So there is the revenue that we collect where we have parking that is issued through a city or our agency or where there are parking permits. So there is revenue as well as expenditures associated with administering those services. Then there is also revenue that we collect as penalties where either on city right-of-way within city-owned lots. If parking is not being paid for, you can administer a penalty. There's also then institutional or private lots where they leverage our systems and our services where we do collect those revenues, but we are ensuring compliance on their behalf.
Understood. My question about 4 questions ago was about revenue for parking, not the ticket side, although it's very interesting to hear, I think it's 18% for the commercial institutional apartments. It's the revenue for paying for parking without getting the ticket. So what is that number? Because that's where the majority of
To the chair, so I can pull the exact figures. There is the revenue we collect through the TPA, and there's the parking permit revenue. I don't have off the top of my head the exact amounts. They are in the millions. The TPA revenue is quite a large amount, both on-street and off-street, and then our parking permit revenue, which is administered by the city, is also, again, in the tens of millions, if not more, in terms of what we collect annually.
So I just asked for another heat map for parking. Penalties?
That's coming. Did you have further questions?
Not just the first heat map. That's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Members wishing to speak, I think I'll take a moment to speak. I think the clerk is going to show you the motion and make sure that that's satisfactory. Is there anyone else that wanted to speak on this item before I do? Okay. So I recognize the clerk is busy right now, so I'm going to paraphrase. Actually, I've got my motion. My motion is that City Council request the General Manager, thank you for this, Transportation Services in collaboration with Court Services, Legal Services, Revenue Services, and the Toronto Police Service, because there's a lot of people that work in this system, to explore the feasibility of a tiered penalty structure for repeat offenders, and to report to the appropriate standing committee in 2027 on the potential for short-term or long-term opportunities, including technical policy and financial considerations, along with the best practices and experiences from other jurisdictions. I know it's long, members, but this is a important report. It's generated a lot of questions. At the latter part of the report, there is a suggestion by the Auditor General that other jurisdictions have been looking at repeat offenders with escalating penalties, but there wasn't a corresponding recommendation to explore that. So I felt that that was an unanswered question in the report. I've made it so that it would come back to the right committee in the future. It doesn't necessarily have to come to audit. And in consultation with the clerk, this is really an ask of Transportation Services because they deal with the regulations and the structure around all of that. But there has to be a lot of consultation in that. So I hope you'll see that of merit. It's twofold. I would love to find a way to deal with those most repeat offenders because they are causing many of the issues, as opposed to somebody that gets a one-off ticket in the blue moon, once in a blue moon. But secondly, I just think, for the integrity of the process that we have in front of us, the Auditor General raised a really interesting question in here that I don't know the answer to. We just didn't see it come forward in the recommendations, and I felt that we should acknowledge that and see what further advice may come about the feasibility of it. So that's the purpose of that motion in front of you. And then I'll just say more generally, of course, my appreciation for getting into the details of the administrative penalty system. And I know that I've talked about it and the committee's talked about it at general government before quite a few times because it's very important to keep an eye on. It's intriguing because of the amount of action that happens with the city and the amount of process and system that's behind it and the dollar value. But the most important takeaway from this is the sense of justice that comes out of it. And we want to make sure that we have a system that deters people from doing the wrong thing, but also has consequences. And so if things are slipping through the cracks or the system is not working properly, the overall system diminishes, and that is having orderly streets and people complying with red lights. And that's why I think it's important for us to turn attention to this. As I said, the dollars are big and the systems are complex, but what's at stake is so much more. And, that really is about having a city that works. So I'm appreciative of this. I know that work is on track to improve the systems. I heard about it today. I also saw it in the response in the report. And I hope we get to talk about this more at either this committee or other committees. Because I think this is such an important aspect of government. So with that, I will ask if there are other members of council that wish to speak. I think Councillor Fletcher, you have a motion.
Yeah, I do. I think the heat maps are going to be quite interesting. So I have a motion for the heat maps across the city for red light and also for parking infractions, which we should have and be able to do that. If it needs to be on private property, that's one thing, or I think you can easily do the ones that are on city property for which people are paying to park. I'll also just say that red light cameras, Mr. Chair, people are going through red lights everywhere because they can't make a turn, except when there's traffic wardens. So not all intersections have red light cameras, but if you've been driving downtown, you'll know that. I just worry about the word dispute, because when I'm hearing that people can't pay and are having trouble, or it's a business operation, and then they're having trouble, and it's going to impact a number of things, that to me is a different system than wasn't me. Somebody stole my car. Quite a different system. And I think that we have a different system for tenants and for others that have different kinds of needs in the city of Toronto. And I don't think this matches that in the word dispute. You're asking for consideration rather than disputing the fact that it happened. You're probably saying it did happen, but I can't pay. It's two different things. I would wonder that this whole thing, because it is all internal, but the impact on the public in having was $30, don't pay it, goes to $40, then $40, and now $50. So that is a major increase, and I think staff and the Auditor General have really figured out why there's so much dispute, because something has gone from a 30 to a 50 for parking infraction, not a red light infraction, very quickly. And I will remind everybody that most of the parking infractions that you're seeing in front of you are in your ward, Councillor Nunziata, where you have green P lots or where you have parking, street parking. I don't think you have that many lots, Councillor Myers, or you, Councillor Holiday, or you, Councillor Crescente, that without green P lots, street parking, and permit parking, those revenues and tickets would look a lot different. And that's one of the reasons why I'm always interested, and I'm happy that our CFO will be giving us that information. The red light cameras, in having such an outstanding amount that only 25 million has been paid, and there's 17 million outstanding, and those, we have an ability to collect that through the province. I'm very happy to see that the staff are being very active on trying to get that sorted out, but I haven't done the percentages, but it's actually quite a large percentage of outstanding. Those were the numbers that I got here. When you talk about tickets, when you talk about parking tickets, red light cameras, I think that's pretty indisputable, although apparently a lot of people are disputing it, which is not disputing it, not paying it, because it is your license plate and you are responsible for that car. Only if somebody stole your car are you not responsible, in which case the police would have a report, in which case that really isn't something to dispute. So I think there's a fair amount of work that's been done. I always worry about things that happened during COVID, policies that got changed during COVID. I'm looking at you, Councillor Nunziata, because COVID was a big moment to change a lot of things. And then when we get back here, we find that, boy, the street looks a lot different, things look a lot different. So looking forward to seeing what I think I know already, which is throughout the city, red lights, people are running them, or maybe there's a concentration of cameras in certain areas, and looking to see there's a concentration of parking tickets in certain areas because there's only a certain place that we are gathering parking tickets. You may have seen the news last night where some people parking on a street in Scarborough have now been getting tickets because they're parking overnight. They could easily have permit parking. You just have to pay. But many of streets in the city don't want to have it. But the consequence is, if you're over 3 hours, now you're getting a $100 ticket. Thank you. I wish we would enforce that more.
Anyone else? Okay. Councillor Nunziata?
Yeah, thank you. I will be supporting the two recommendations, but I just want to say on comments that Councillor Fletcher made, yeah, I do have a lot in my ward, but the problem I have with the TPA parking lot is that they're not enforcing it. People are parking for free. But also the big issue too is that we have, and I mean, that's not before us today, is we don't have a lot of parking enforcement officers out there giving tickets. And so all these issues that we have is that they're not giving tickets, and then we're not collecting the revenue because they don't have enough staff and parking enforcement at the police to hand out these tickets. So that's also very frustrating, I find, because, you know, you get so many complaints, but yet we can't enforce it with all the infractions. But I do support the motions we have before us. And so thank you for the motions, Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Holiday.
Thank you. On the amendment by Councillor Fletcher, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. On the amendment from me, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And on the item as amended, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Members, we have 5 minutes left before the break. I sense we're very close. So with that, I'll take a motion to extend past the deadline. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. I think our next item will be rather quick. Next item is AU, thank you everyone. AU 13.11, continuous controls monitoring city staff overtime, absenteeism, and other payroll-related expenses. Questions of staff? Seeing none. Members wishing to speak?
This is about, okay. I just have one question, just around, was there a policy change made? I know when we had the unfunded liability, then it went to 20 sick days. Is that correct? Maybe I'll ask that offline. I'll ask it offline.
AU 13.11.
Offline, it's offline.
So Councillor Fletcher, are we going offline with the question? Yes. Okay. Members wishing to speak on the item, unless there's questions? Okay. I have a motion. It's rather brief. It's simply to ask the Auditor General to continue to report on this and to look at expanded time frame to see multi-year reporting. And members, I'm not attempting to change the Auditor General's work plan, really just to reflect encouragement by this committee because we see value in the report and to look at those extra years. So hopefully you support that. I think these are helpful discussions and will become very, very helpful in time once we start to see patterns. Any other members wishing to speak or ask questions on this? No. All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? That's carried. And on the item as amended, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Our final item is AU 13.12. That is SmartTrack invoicing. Councillor Myers, you held the item. Questions of staff?
Yes, thank you. First question, have we received an updated invoice from Metrolinx yet?
Through the chair, yes, we've received about $14 million worth of invoices regarding the East Harbor project to date.
$14 million, and what about the other ones?
We've not received further invoices. That covers the work from 2018 to 2022 at this point. Further invoices are expected. Yeah.
So the East Harbor invoice, is that the total amount of the invoice, or is that only for 2022 to 2025?
That's for 2018 to 2022 for the work during that period. There's certainly expected to be further invoices following that.
And how closely does that track with the city's internal figures?
We're in the process of evaluating that invoice to make sure that it covers the work that the city is responsible for and the costs that we would expect to come out of that. So we're in the process of reviewing that invoice to ensure that that's aligned with our expectations.
Sorry, so does the city not have the invoices already prepared in terms of what it expects something to cost?
We would not prepare kind of pre-invoices. We'd receive the invoice from Metrolinx with their costs, and then it's our practice to review that invoice and seek further information from them to defend that those documents.
Okay, so we have the 2018 to 2022 invoice for the East Harbor front. What happens if there's a dispute?
Through the chair, the master agreement, the main agreement for the SmartTrack includes a dispute resolution process. So that would first be reviewed, as we're doing now, at a staff level. It would then go to the steering committee, a director level, to deal with specific issues, and then proceed to a program committee, and finally to the highest levels at the executive committee.
And then what happens if they're not able to resolve the dispute at the executive committee level?
I would have to review the specifics of the agreement, but I don't believe there's been any examples where we've not been able to come to some agreement in other circumstances at an executive level.
Does it go to litigation, or you just don't know? There's nothing. The contract is the master service agreement is blank on that.
Yeah, generally we would not seek litigation, as the kind of the relationship between the province and the city doesn't facilitate that. But it would become a further discussion with either bring it to council as an ultimate resolution for our perspective.
And when do you expect to see the outstanding invoices from the two other projects and the two other projects that I guess have not been moved forward, King Liberty and Finch Kennedy, but work is underway on those projects?
Through the chair, the invoice schedule is another piece of work that we are working with Metrolinx to provide, so that they give us an idea of when those invoices will be coming to the city, and that includes the projects that are in construction and those that have been that are being closed out. So we'll receive all of those invoices for review and consideration on that schedule once we settle that.
When will council be updated on the schedule, and if that schedule is being met?
At this point, it would be through any further future reports on SmartTrack. Mm-hmm. I don't believe any have been scheduled at this point, but we may be able to include that in other forthcoming reports, either from transit expansion or through other vehicles.
Okay, and then going back to the original 2018 to 2022 Harborfront invoice. What divisions are responsible for verifying the accuracy of the invoice?
Through the chair, the invoice is generally reviewed by the project team in transit expansion, and with any details or questions, we would reach out to the appropriate divisions, whether that be transportation services, Toronto Water, Parks, would often have more detailed information about expected costs and relevance of the invoice amounts.
Okay. And does the $14 million figure, does that sound within the range of what was expected, more or less?
Through the chair, I would say yes. I mean, this was the design exercise for those, and it was obviously a very complex site, and $14 million would be in the range of a reasonable amount of work for that project.
Okay, thank you.
Members, any other questions? Members wishing to speak? Councillor Myers, did you want to move the item? Councillor Myers moves the item. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Mr. Clerk, is that our last item? That is correct. That is our last item. I wish to thank everybody and let you know that the meeting is adjourned.